A quiet summer afternoon, marked only by the buzzing of a cicada on a tree. Inside the Murim Alliance, martial artists are hard at work, the sound of their training echoing through the courtyard. Deep within the complex lies the Shadow Pavilion, the place where the Alliance's internal secrets are handled. In a dimly lit room, a man sits silently, his face hidden in the shadows. The door suddenly slides open as a young official rushes in. This is Lee Yop, a rookie investigator who looks like he's already in way over his head. He takes a seat, explaining that he's filling in for a senior who couldn't make it to the interrogation. From the shadows, the prisoner speaks, his voice calm and completely unimpressed. Lee Yop breaks into a cold sweat under the man's intense gaze. He tries to maintain his professionalism, warning the man to choose his words carefully or face the law enforcement hall. The man just stares back, his eyes sharp even in the dark. He scoffs, calling it pathetic that they sent a rookie, because the seniors are too scared, he'll beat them up. Lee Yop is taken aback by how relaxed the man is, wondering if he even understands the trouble he's in. He opens the file to check the name. Baek So Cheon, squad leader of the Iron Sword Corps. The Iron Sword Corps is known as the undisputed elite of the entire Murim Alliance. The investigator wonders if that's why this guy is acting so incredibly rude. He looks at the age on the paper and does a double take. 38? That can't be right. He looks at the man's face for the first time and is stunned. He looks like he's in his early 20s at most. Lee Yop can't believe it. This man has been in the Alliance 20 years longer than he has. According to the records, Baek So Cheon joined and immediately made a name for himself in the Iron Sword Corps. The very next year, he distinguished himself in battle, showing talent that was off the charts. His rise was legendary, and he became a squad leader in record time. But it didn't stop there. He quickly climbed the ranks to deputy unit captain and then unit captain. Lee Yop's eyes widen as he reads further down the page. He can't believe his eyes. He can't wrap his head around it. A man who used to command the entire Iron Sword Corps is now just a squad leader. It gets even crazier. Baek became the master of the secret pavilion in only 2 years. The secret pavilion is a covert strike organization, sitting at the very heart of the Alliance's power. Only the finest martial artists are chosen for its secret missions, under the Alliance leader's direct orders. A guy like Lee Yop would normally never even get to see the face of someone that high-ranking. He counts 6 accelerated promotions, a career so famous he wonders how he hadn't heard of it before now. Then he sees the other side of the record, and his heart sinks. Baek was demoted 9 times. The man himself just lets out a bored yawn while waiting. 5 of those demotions were for disobeying orders, and he even assaulted a superior once. Lee Yop is stunned the guy is even still alive after all that trouble. It doesn't make any sense. Why would they assign a rookie to someone this important? A man with this history should have been handled by the Shadow Pavilion master himself. Baek repeats his mockery, laughing at the idea that the seniors are too scared of a beating to show up. Lee Yop realizes his superiors set him up, sending him in without any warning about who he was really dealing with. He tries to steady himself, knowing the higher-ups are likely watching this interrogation very closely. He takes a breath and gets back to business, asking Baek about what happened this time. 2 days ago, Baek's squad was assigned a high-priority strike mission. He looks the man in the eye and asks if it's true that he refused the order. Baek simply confirms it. Baek So Cheon recalls the night of the mission, where he was questioned about why he chose to hold back his troops. His only answer: there was an ambush waiting for them. He looks the investigator dead in the eye, asking if they really expected him to walk his men into a trap just to prove it was there. Back in the interrogation room, Lee Yop asks how he could possibly have known about an ambush if he didn't see one. Baek casually calls it a hunch, leaving the rookie investigator stunned that someone would disobey direct orders over a mere feeling. Lee Yop points out that a field team was sent to the site afterward, and they didn't find even a single trace of an enemy presence. He asks Baek if he honestly doesn't trust the official investigation done by the Shadow Pavilion. Baek just throws the question back at him, asking if Lee Yop actually trusts it himself. He dismisses the rookie, telling him to forget it because their investigations are clearly a mess. Lee Yop tries to hold his ground, arguing that an order is an order, regardless of what the commander might feel. But Baek stops him with a chilling question. Would following orders still matter if it meant his entire squad got slaughtered? The rookie looks at his hands, thinking about Baek's incredible track record and the string of impossible promotions he earned after joining the Alliance. In the Murim Alliance, getting promoted even once is a huge deal, and this man made it look easy. He can't help but wonder if someone with that much experience might have actually been right about the ambush. But the current reality is much harsher. Baek is just a squad leader in the Iron Sword Corps. The ruling is handed down. For his 10th act of insubordination, Baek is being demoted to the lowest rank possible, a rank-and-file martial artist. Baek doesn't even argue. He just sits there nonchalantly and says that will be all. Lee Yop stands up to conclude the session and walks out, his head spinning after the interrogation. He stops and asks a personal question as a junior. With all these demotions and humiliations, why hasn't Baek just left the Alliance? Lee Yop admits that he joined the Alliance because it was his childhood dream, just like so many others. Baek looks out the window and quietly mentions that it was his dream too, ever since he was 6 years old. Baek sits in the sunlight, looking more like a tired dreamer than a dangerous criminal. The rookie stands there in silence, not knowing what to say to that. Later, Lee Yop meets with his superior to discuss the prisoner's statement. Shadow Pavilion Master Hwang Jongson listens, as Lee Yop expresses his shock over Baek's seniority. Hwang Jongson looks out the window, fully aware of the heavy weight behind the name Baek So Cheon. Lee Yop is floored to find out that this recruit has actually been in the Alliance for decades. Hwang Jongson explains that when he first joined, Baek was already a legend that everyone thought was born for greatness. And it didn't take long for the world to give him a chance to show exactly what he was capable of. That chance came with the start of the massive war against the Black Heaven Alliance. Throughout the 10-year conflict, Baek So Cheon wasn't just a participant, he was right at the center of every major battle. His skills were so overwhelming that they put every other martial artist in the Alliance to shame. He climbed to the very top, with stories of his power spreading to every corner of the land. But everything changed during the final battle that led to the peace treaty. In a moment of absolute chaos, Baek's dantian was shattered, leaving him with severe internal injuries that should have been fatal. Hwang Jongson notes that while his body eventually healed, his source of power, his dantian, was gone for good. The divine physician himself declared that Baek would never be able to use internal energy again. Even after losing his power, he held onto his position as pavilion master for a while, but it was the start of a long, painful slide. It took him 17 years to reach the top, but he lost it all and fell to the bottom in just 3. Hwang Jongson explains that despite the official gag order, his fall from grace is an open secret among the high-ranking members. Lee Yop finally understands why none of this legendary history was included in the official reports he was given. He asks with concern what will happen to a man who can no longer use martial arts in a world that values nothing else. The pavilion master simply replies that even a tiger without teeth or claws isn't something that mere dogs or wolves can ever hope to kill. Hwang Jongson continues his thought, nodding that for a man of Baek's stature, losing his dantian must have been a crushing psychological blow, making the demotion feel particularly cruel. Lee Yop listens as the pavilion master adds that if the Alliance were truly heartless, Baek would have been locked away or killed long ago. He suggests that the only reason Baek has survived this long might be due to the silent protection of the Alliance leader himself. A vision of the Alliance leader appears, a man of immense power who kept his distance even as his most cherished subordinate fell from grace. The leader was said to care for Baek more than his own flesh and blood, yet he never uttered a word to stop the repeated demotions. Without knowing the leader's true intentions, the high-ranking officials found it impossible to simply discard Baek entirely. Hwang Jongson muses that now that Baek has hit rock bottom, the leader's plan might finally reveal itself. The world of the Murim is a ruthless place, and no one stays at the bottom for long without being consumed. The pavilion master ends the conversation, stating they will revisit the topic when the time is right. Baek So Cheon returns to his quarters, where he is immediately greeted by two of his loyal subordinates. Hwang Il-gal and No Woong rush to him, still addressing him as their squad leader despite the official news. Baek tries to set them straight, telling them he no longer holds that rank, but No Woong is ready to riot on his behalf. No Woong goes as far as threatening a hunger strike to protest the injustice, but a weary Baek just wants them to leave. Baek sits in silence for a moment, the weight of the failed mission and the alleged ambush still heavy on his mind. No Woong softens his voice, telling Baek that the entire squad knows they only survived because of his decision. He truly believes in his leader. Baek calls them prickly, but Hwang Il-gal points out that they only act this way because they're genuinely worried about him. Once No Woong leaves, Baek turns to Hwang Il-gal and asks why he hasn't followed suit. He reminds the younger man not to call him commander anymore, while Hwang Il-gal asks if he'll even be allowed to stay in the Corps. Baek knows his time in the Iron Sword Corps is over. He predicts a reassignment is coming soon from the inflexible Shadow Pavilion. He asks Hwang Il-gal to be honest. Wouldn't it be easier for everyone if he were finally gone? Baek begins to pack his few belongings, asking if his presence was so stifling that they'd all break out in hives. He waves the younger man off, telling him to shut it and leave before things get any more sentimental. Hwang Il-gal asks if he's really forgotten his own past, reminding him how legendary he used to be. He calls him Big Bro Baek, dropping the formalities to express the deep respect he still feels. Baek's hands tighten around his gear. He tells Hwang Il-gal to save him from a shitty trip down memory lane. Hwang Il-gal is taken aback by the swearing, nodding that Baek never used to talk like that. Baek scoffs, saying that a weakling swearing is just as natural as a frightened dog barking. Because he's powerless now, his words have changed. He tells him to get lost one last time. Frustrated, Hwang Il-gal agrees to leave since Baek is being so difficult. A messenger suddenly appears at the door, asking if the captain is present. The young man informs Hwang Il-gal that the Corps commander needs to see him urgently. Hwang Il-gal sighs, knowing the commander only calls for him when there's unpleasant work to be done. He tells Baek he's off to pledge loyalty. Baek doesn't look back, simply wishing him safe travels as he continues to prepare for his own departure. Hwang Il-gal walks through the quiet hallways of the Alliance, heading toward the commander's office. He steps into the room and announces his presence to the man waiting there. Iron Sword Corps Commander Chun Jiang is looking at a map, immediately grumbling about how Baek So Cheon is a persistent leech. He wonders aloud why Baek won't just leave the Alliance on his own, before turning his sharp gaze on Hwang Il-gal. Chun Jiang asks if the captain actually believes Baek's ridiculous story about an ambush. Hwang Il-gal quickly denies it, claiming he was only playing along because of how prickly and difficult Baek can get. Chun Jiang agrees, calling Baek a bastard with the absolute worst temper in the entire Murim alliance. The commander wears a dark, satisfied smirk as he contemplates his next move against his former rival. He points to a spot on the map, Zhejiang Province. That is where Baek is being reassigned to the remote Munseong branch. Chun Jiang is glad to finally be rid of him, certain that he will never have to look at Baek So Cheon's face again. Chun Jiang, with a cold look in his eyes, admits he pulled strings just for Baek So Cheon. He wants him to rot in obscurity and die like a backwater ghost. A close-up reveals his utter lack of remorse. For him, this is a calculated victory over a rival. Outside, Baek So Cheon begins his journey away from the Alliance. Someone's voice follows him, apologizing for not coming along because they couldn't abandon their family. Baek pauses, his face unreadable but seemingly accepting of his solitary path. The sun shines brightly over the massive architecture of the Murim Alliance as Baek walks away, a lone figure in the vast courtyard. The voice encourages him to rest well in the countryside. A detailed shot of hands being wrung. The speaker notes there won't be any grand farewell party for a demoted man. It is Hwang Il-gal, his hands clasped as he watches his former superior leave. He breaks into a sudden, boisterous laugh, trying to mask the bitterness of the moment with forced cheer. He jokes that he and the others will handle the farewell drinks themselves, sparing Baek the trouble of attending. Baek passes through the towering main gates of the Alliance, stepping out of the place that was once his whole world. His feet touch the dirt of the main road, marking the true beginning of his exile. He treks through the dense, sun-dappled forests of Jejeong province, the weight of his belongings heavy on his back. A portrait of the man who once stood at the peak of the martial world, Baek So Cheon, the former supreme master. The scene shifts to the pavilion of heavenly wisdom, the grand center of intelligence and strategy for the entire martial alliance. Inside, intelligence reports are being reviewed, noting suspicious movements between the Black Heaven Alliance and the Blood Cult from the outer regions. The scroll details how the 7 unorthodox factions and the 7 demonic families are currently reorganizing their forces. A tactical map is covered in markers. The strategists fear these are the first omens of danger in 3 years, and the threat of war is escalating. A hand rests firmly on the map. A subordinate calls out to the man in charge, addressing him as the Grand Strategist. The Grand Strategist, focused on the unfolding chaos, gives a short command to enter. Sima Iljung steps into the room, his expression grave as he approaches the commander of the pavilion. Sima Iljung bows respectfully and reports that Baek So Cheon has officially packed his things and left for the Munseong branch in Jejeong province. From across the map-strewn office, the Grand Strategist acknowledges the news, but Sima Iljung voices his frustration, unable to grasp the logic behind this decision. Sima Iljung looks up, his face full of genuine confusion and concern about why things had to come to this for a man like Baek. The Grand Strategist remains silent, his sharp eyes fixed on the map as if searching for the hidden meaning in Baek's departure. Sima Iljung reflects on his first days, joining the Alliance as a strategist for the pavilion. Back then, Baek So Cheon was at the absolute top, leading the secret pavilion. He wasn't just strong, he was an idol, someone people looked up to with genuine reverence. Nobody could wrap their heads around how fast he fell from grace. It was as if he walked straight into his own ruin, reaching the absolute bottom. Seeing him leave in such a pathetic state felt wrong to everyone watching. Jegal Hyun, the Grand Strategist, notes that truly understanding a person is never easy. He asks the rookie if he's been cleared to enter the Tactical Command Center yet. Sima Iljung admits his clearance isn't for another month, but Jegal Hyun tells him to follow. He's going to use his own authority to push that timeline forward right now. The mechanical lift begins its descent. They go deep beneath the pavilion of heavenly wisdom. Jegal Hyun points out that while it looks like a simple corridor, it's far more dangerous. The path is rigged with enough traps and hidden sentries to stop anyone but the Alliance leader. They arrive at the Martial Alliance's secret tactical command center. This is the brain of the whole operation, where a strategist's real training begins. Rumors say this room holds a secret that only a few are ever allowed to see. Sima Iljung catches a glimpse and is instantly floored. Jegal Hyun gives a stern warning. One word of this to anyone and he'll be beheaded. Terrified, the rookie swears he won't even talk about it in his sleep. Before them stands the Murim ranking register, a massive record of every master. Rank 1 is currently held by Aksogun, the leader of their alliance. Rank 2 is Yom Hwashin, who leads the Black Heaven Alliance. The list catalogs every notable fighter, all the way down to the 100th rank. The martial ranking ledger is real, and it evaluates the strongest masters in the Central Plains. Jegal Hyun asks if he knows who once stood at the very top of that ledger. Sima Iljung's eyes widen as he connects the dots. Baek So Cheon, the name feels impossible now. Jegal Hyun confirms it. Before his crippling injury, he held the absolute first rank for years. In his prime, he stood even higher than their current alliance leader. Even though he's lost all his energy, his name sits at the bottom now purely out of respect. The old titles are stripped away, from squad leader of the Iron Sword Corps, down to a lowly recruit. Baek So Cheon is now officially just a low-ranking martial artist in a remote province. As he leaves, a messenger calls out, asking him to stop for a moment. He brings new orders directly from the alliance leader. Baek looks bored, wondering if there's even anything left to take from him. The messenger hesitates, the weight of the order clearly bothering him. The order is to retrieve the ghost shadow sword that was once bestowed upon him. Baek grips the hilt of the blade one last time. The messenger begs him to just hand it over and follow the exact orders. He tosses the legendary sword aside and tells the messenger to get lost. The scarred messenger drops to his knees, his voice cracking as he begs for cooperation. He pleads with Baek So Cheon not to provoke the alliance leader any further, reminding him that many lives are on the line. He reveals that years ago, when Baek was still the pavilion master, he was the one who saved his life on the battlefield. He offers up his own life if it means sparing Baek, but begs him not to send them back empty-handed. With a sharp, sudden movement, the matter is settled as Baek turns his back on the alliance for good. A few days later, the scene shifts far away to the Munseong branch in Zhejiang province. The Yangchu estate, once a place of prestige, now stands in grim silence. Inside, the aftermath of a brutal massacre is uncovered, with 13 bodies left in the wake of the violence. Branch manager Lim stares at the carnage, unable to fathom the level of cruelty it took to slaughter an entire family. It's hard for him to believe that a hero as renowned as Yang Chu could be taken down so easily and ruthlessly. Squad leader Baeon rushes over to the manager, but the news he brings is just as bleak. No witnesses have stepped forward, and given the scale of the slaughter, Baeon doubts anyone would dare to. Lim sighs, ordering the bodies to be moved for a proper medical examination, while they continue the investigation. Baeon leans in to whisper that Hall Master Wang is expecting a meeting at the 100 Flowers Pavilion in a few days. Lim is incredulous that Baeon would blindly accept a summons without knowing the gang leader's true intentions. The manager pinches the bridge of his nose, venting his frustration over their lack of real power. The man behind the summons is Hall Master Wang Gon, the ruthless leader of the Divine Fire Gang. His faction has been expanding at an alarmingly fast rate ever since the Great War ended. After crushing the top sword clan in the region, they've been flaunting their absolute dominance across the province. Wang Gon oversees the southern territories with a terrifying amount of authority, ruling over cities like Munseong. Lim knows that a mere branch manager like himself has no real way of refusing a man who acts like an absolute king. He tells Baeon to be more careful next time as they wrap up their work for the day. As they walk back, Lim remembers that a new recruit is supposed to be joining their branch today. Baeon's eyes light up at the news, since it's been years since they've seen any fresh blood in their ranks. Lim warns him to go easy, guessing the recruit probably got on someone's bad side to be exiled here. Baeon jokes that he'll treat the newcomer like a delicate maiden, excited for some extra help. They arrive back at the Martial Alliance's Munseong branch as the sun begins to set. A hand reaches out to slide the door open. Baeon is surprised to see that the new recruit has already made himself at home inside. A young man with long silver hair sits waiting for them. Baek So Cheon introduces himself calmly, carrying only a small pack on his shoulder. He hands over his official reassignment order, which confirms his demotion to a low-ranking martial artist. Lim scans the document, his jaw dropping as he reads the details. He can't believe a former squad leader of the prestigious Iron Sword Corps is standing in his office. Baeon is even more shocked, shouting that the paperwork says this guy is 38 years old. The young officer wonders if Baek has mastered some legendary art that halts the aging process. Lim is more concerned with how an elite of his caliber ended up exiled to a middle-of-nowhere branch. Baek just shrugs it off, saying he probably just didn't work hard enough in his previous life. Lim narrows his eyes, asking if Baek is saying that just to mock their humble station. Baek turns the question back on him, asking how the branch manager himself ended up all the way out here. Lim admits he worked his fingers to the bone only to end up exiled, to which Baek bluntly replies that he probably just lacked competence. Instead of getting angry, Lim laughs, finding the former squad leader's sheer audacity fascinating. Branch manager Lim is left speechless, finding Baek So Cheon's casual and relaxed demeanor oddly impossible to hate. Lim pauses, deciding to ask one more serious question before they wrap things up. He looks Baek in the eye, asking where his martial prowess currently stands. Baek gazes out the window, admitting that he was quite a formidable fighter in his past life. But when asked about the present, Baek bluntly calls himself utterly pathetic. He spins a wild tale about riding a golden calf and facing off against the leader of the Black Heaven Alliance in his prime. Lim smiles, relieved that there isn't much need for fighting in this quiet part of the province anyway. Baek agrees, hoisting his pack as he prepares to settle in. Squad leader Bayon leads him to a modest living quarter that, despite its shabby appearance, gets plenty of sunlight. As they walk, Bayon awkwardly points out that even though Baek is 12 years older and technically a senior, he still has to act as Baek's superior since he holds a higher rank in this specific branch. Baek tells him to be his guest, showing no interest in internal politics or rank. Bayon is relieved, but curiosity gets the better of him as he asks what exactly led to Baek's demotion. Baek simply states that he beat his former superior to a bloody pulp. Bayon freezes in shock, the moon hanging high above as the weight of Baek's words sinks in. Baek laughs it off, suggesting that in a tiny branch like this, they should all just treat each other like family. Bayon force laughs along, but then he notices something very unusual. He points out that Baek isn't even carrying a sword. Baek stops in his tracks, asking why anyone would naturally assume he was carrying one. Bayon wonders if Baek practices a different kind of martial art instead. Baek gives a firm no, his expression turning serious for the first time. He declares that he has absolutely no intention of using any martial arts ever again. He thanks Bayon for showing him the way and heads inside his new home. Meanwhile, back at the Alliance headquarters, the legendary Ghost Shadow Sword is presented on a silken cloth. The Alliance leader is surprised that Baek handed it over at all, and asks what the Fallen Star's final words were. The messenger hesitates, asking if his superior really wants to hear the former master's final words. Grand Strategist Jekyll Hyun doesn't blink, ordering him to speak and leave out nothing. He recounts how Baek So Cheon didn't just leave quietly, his movements were as sharp as ever. He had gripped the sword he was supposed to return one last time. Then he threw it back, calling the Alliance petty and vowing to never touch a blade again. The messenger was left struggling to catch the weapon, while Baek just walked away into the distance. Finishing his report, the man bows low, still rattled by the encounter. Jekyll Hyun and his colleagues stare at the discarded blade, the silence in the room getting heavy. He asks if the messenger really plans on relaying such a blunt insult to the Alliance leader. Jekyll Hyun knows those words were meant for the man at the very top, not for a lowly messenger. He wonders what really happened between Baek So Cheon and the leader to cause such a rift. Far away, the night wind blows through the trees as the scene shifts. Baek So Cheon stands under the moon, looking toward the horizon with a calm expression. He's alone now, heading toward a new life in the backwaters without his status or his sword. In a different part of the province, a grand lantern illuminates a high-end manor. Branch manager Lim is led through the building, wondering why he was summoned for a VIP meeting so late. He knows the guy he's meeting, someone who thinks alcohol and women can solve any problem. It reminds him of when he was first appointed to this post and saw the corruption firsthand. Lim lets out a heavy sigh, bracing himself for another round of condescending talk. His mind wanders back to an investigation he was running recently regarding the local victims. He had visited Jo Jin, the head of a nearby manor and a close friend of the man who was murdered. Jo Jin kept his head down, claiming he didn't know anything unusual about the victim. But Lim could tell the man was lying, hiding his true thoughts behind a wall of silence. To test him, Lim mentioned seeing the corrupt clan head Wang gone near the manor. The old man nearly jumped out of his skin at the mere mention of the name. Lim watched him closely, confirming that the fear of the Divine Fire Gang was absolute. It was obvious Jo Jin had been threatened long before the Alliance representative ever showed up. He wondered if Wang Gan was the one who had actually orchestrated the bad blood in the first place. But he tried to doubt it. Hopping an orthodox faction wouldn't stoop to such blatant thuggery. The doors slide open, and Lim is ushered into the banquet room by the hostesses. Clan head Wang Gan greets him with a massive spread of food and a fake, boisterous laugh. The room is filled with luxury, a clear attempt to show off the gang's wealth. Wang Gan plays the part of a friendly host, asking if Lim's recent investigation went well. Lim keeps it short, admitting that his search for clues about the late warrior Yang came up empty. From the corner, Hyuksu watches the exchange with a creepy, predatory smile. Lim catches the look and keeps his guard up, knowing exactly what kind of monster he's dealing with. He thinks about the rumors surrounding this gang, stories of assault, extortion, and people just vanishing. He looks down at his tea, his hand steady even as he's surrounded by enemies. In the reflection, he sees a man who has spent too much time pretending not to notice the evil around him. He takes a long drink, the weight of his own choices as a branch manager settling in. Wang Gan leans in, finally dropping the pleasantries to say there's something serious they need to discuss. He announces that the Divine Fire Gang is starting a new venture, and Lim can only offer a hollow congratulation. Wang Gan gulps down a drink, looking smug and in control. He reveals his plan. The Divine Fire Gang is officially going into the ironworks business. Branch manager Lim is visibly sweating, as Wang Gan acknowledges the inevitable rumors that come with a new business. He slams a box onto the table, telling Lim to just ignore any unsavory gossip and let things slide. Wang Gan flips the lid open, and Lim's eyes go wide at the contents inside. It's 100-year fleeciflower, a treasure worth more than Lim could ever earn. Lim is stunned by the rare herb, knowing it could grant a martial artist a full decade's worth of internal energy. He immediately tries to refuse the gift, but Wang Gan just smiles like he expected that exact reaction. The gang leader mentions Lim's son, asking if the boy is currently learning martial arts. It's a thinly veiled threat disguised as a gift, as Wang Gan tells him not to reject his sincerity. Back at the Alliance branch, Baek So Cheon is already hard at work, going through stacks of old records. Squad leader Baeon watches him from the doorway, impressed by the new rookie's efficiency despite his strict look. Baeon is just happy to finally have some competent help in the office after so many years. Baek points out a series of harassment complaints against the Taejeong faction, all filed by the same person. Baeon suggests a bureaucratic approach, wanting to ship the complaints off to a higher division in Jejeong. But Baek calls the whole process a waste of time, saying they should handle the thugs themselves with the men they have. Baeon warns him that the Taejeong boss is a real martial artist and far too dangerous for them to mess with. Baek asks him point-blank if he's taking bribes from the syndicate, which sends Baeon into a defensive rage. Baeon explains that the faction is rumored to be backed by the massive Divine Fire Gang. The gang is the premier power in the province, and their influence is so vast that no one dares to cross them. He even mentions that the last manager was fired just for getting on their bad side. Baek nonchalantly suggests that if they're that scared, taking a bribe might actually be the smarter move. Baeon is completely blindsided by the suggestion, unable to believe what he's hearing from a fellow warrior. Baek explains that for Alliance warriors, being corrupt looks better than admitting they're just too scared to act. He looks at Baeon with a cold, judging stare, asking if the squad leader agrees with that logic. The words cut deep, and Baeon screams that the whole situation just pisses him off. Later that evening, Baeon is still brooding over the conversation while talking to branch manager Lim. Lim tries to comfort him, thinking Baeon is just intimidated because he originally wanted to join the Iron Sword Corps. But Baeon knows it's more than just simple intimidation about his career path. He clenches his fists, realizing that Baek's harsh words hit the mark perfectly. He can't get that cold look out of his head, no matter how hard he tries. Baek's face haunts him, reminding him that choosing silence is the same as choosing corruption. It wasn't fear that made him silent in the office. It was the overwhelming weight of his own shame. He actually considered that being a corrupt martial artist might be better than facing the truth of his cowardice. Determined to prove himself, Baeon asks if they should just take the Taejeong faction down right now. Lim just tells him to stop talking nonsense, reminding him that he's no match for their boss. Dejected, Baeon sits back down, forced to accept that he really is weaker than a local thug leader. Lim tells him to head home and rest up so he's ready for tomorrow's patrol. Baeon leaves the room, his head hanging low as he exits into the hallway. Alone in the office, Lim returns to his paperwork, but his focus is long gone. He rubs his temples in frustration, admitting to himself that he's just as much of a coward as Baeon. The next morning, the marketplace is bustling with life as the town goes about its daily business. Squad leader Baeon walks beside Baek So Cheon, stealing glances at the silent rookie with a nervous sweat on his brow. The tension breaks when Baek finally asks if Baeon has anything to get off his chest after their talk. The squad leader denies it. Then Baeon tries to smooth things over by inviting the silver-haired man for a drink once their patrol is done. He remarks that to a former elite of the Iron Sword Corps, a simple patrol in this backwater town must feel like a joke. Their conversation is cut short as they reach a corner of the marketplace where a group of thugs has surrounded a merchant's stall. An old vendor, bruised and bloodied, defiantly yells that he will never stop filing complaints against their extortion. Baek recognizes the man immediately, identifying him as the persistent citizen who filed the reports they reviewed earlier. Instead of jumping into the fray, Baek casually asks Baeon if they should just head for that drink now, testing the squad leader. Baeon doesn't answer, his gaze hardening as he watches the injustice unfolding right in front of him. The thugs laugh, raining down blows on the old man and mocking him for thinking the Alliance would ever come to his aid. Driven by a newfound sense of duty, Baeon steps forward and loudly declares the thugs under arrest for assault and extortion. He demands they drop their weapons immediately, his voice carrying an authority he had long since let go of. The thugs turn, and a scarred man among them sneers, recognizing team leader Baeon and mocking his sudden appearance. He asks if Baeon is only acting tough now because he got a tongue lashing from his superiors at the office. Baeon's eyes narrow in fury as he realizes how little respect these criminals have for the Alliance's representatives. The thug continues his taunts, telling Baeon not to take his personal frustrations out on them just because he's having a bad day. With a sudden and violent movement, a fist lashes out, smashing into the arrogant thug's face and distorting his features. To everyone's shock, Baeon shuts that filthy mouth of his with a fist as hard as iron. The other gang members freeze in shock, while Baek watches from a distance, curious to see how his superior handles this. Enraged by the resistance, the thugs draw their blades and charge at Baeon all at once, abandoning any pretense of a fair fight. Baeon's hand drops to the hilt of his sword, his muscles tensing as he prepares to show them the skills of a true warrior. In a flash of steel, he draws his blade and delivers a series of precise strikes that send the attackers flying back. Baek observes the chaotic skirmish with a critical eye, noting that despite their numbers, the thugs lack formal training. Baeon moves through the crowd like a whirlwind, his dark green robes fluttering as he parries every clumsy swing. He doesn't hold back, landing a deep cut on an attacker's arm and proving that his authority isn't just for show. As the thug collapses in a heap of screams, Baeon stands firm, the marketplace air thick with the smell of blood. He bellows a question at the remaining criminals, demanding to know how they dare raise weapons against the Alliance. He orders them to disarm immediately, warning that anyone who continues to resist will have to answer to him personally. Sensing an opening, a stocky man with brownish hair, the boss, leaps from the shadows to strike Baeon from behind. Baeon senses the murderous intent at the last second, his eyes widening as he realizes a sneak attack is coming. The ringleader's heavy strike smashes into the ground, narrowly missing Baeon but kicking up a massive cloud of dust. The thug boss laughs, mocking Baeon for getting cocky just because he managed to beat a few low-level lackeys. Taejeong's eyes gleam with malice as he prepares to finish off the squad leader who dared to disrupt his business. But Baeon was faster, plunging his blade straight into the ringleader's shoulder. Baeon is pushed to the limit of his rage, while the thugs lie on the ground, groaning in agony. His eyes blaze with fury as he narrowly escapes death from a sneak attack behind his back. A cold light flashes in Baeon's eyes as the thug's dishonorable tactics push his anger beyond the breaking point. Baeon thrusts his blade straight at the ringleader's throat and screams, "I'll kill you." Just as the blade is about to fall, Baek flashes into motion and grabs Baeon's wrist, stopping him from taking the criminal's life. The heavy sword stops inches from the ringleader's neck, held motionless by Baek's seemingly effortless grip. Baek stares down at Baeon with a cold, detached expression, telling the squad leader not to misunderstand his actions. He makes it clear that he isn't intervening to save the thug's life, but for reasons of his own. Baek points out the cold reality. The thug tried to murder Baeon from behind, and thus, Baeon has the absolute right to decide the criminal's fate. But Baek adds, does Baeon really believe that mercy can lead a man like that back to the path of righteousness? He will only come back for revenge, Baeon immediately retorts. On the ground, the terrified and bloodied thug pathetically stammers that he would never do such a thing. Baek's hand begins to loosen, and he delivers a final, stone-cold assessment. He observes that, judging by Baeon's eyes, this would be the squad leader's very first kill. Baek steps completely aside, telling Baeon that he must cast aside his emotions and let his rational mind make the final decision. Baeon stares at the cowering man, his face drenched in sweat as he pants heavily, the weight of a human life pressing down on his conscience. Finally, Baeon lowers his weapon and steps back, deciding that the lesson they've dealt today is sufficient for now. Taking command of the aftermath, Baek turns his icy gaze toward the remaining thugs and counts down, ordering them to drop their weapons and kneel. Nearby, the marketplace residents begin to gather and whisper, stunned to see the Murim alliance actually standing up for a commoner like Old Man Go. Baek asks Baeon if he's prepared for the fallout, nodding that things are bound to get loud and complicated now that they've crossed the local gang. Baeon can't help but feel a spark of annoyance, thinking to himself that while Baek did the provoking, he was the one forced to do all the heavy lifting. Despite his frustration, a bead of sweat rolls down Baeon's face as he worries about the inevitable retaliation from the Taejeong faction. His anxious thoughts are interrupted when a weary, cracked voice calls out to him, addressing him simply as young man. Baeon feels a sudden weight on his arm as the elderly vendor reaches out with a trembling hand to steady himself. Turning quickly, Baeon looks at the old man with genuine concern, asking if he has been badly injured in the scuffle. Tears well up in Old Man Go's eyes as he thanks the squad leader profusely for being the first person in a long time to actually help them. Baeon's eyes widen in surprise as the simple, heartfelt gratitude of the commoner hits him harder than any blow from a thug. Looking around, he sees the faces of the townspeople lighting up with genuine happiness and relief, a sight he hadn't seen in years. Feeling a mix of shame and pride, Baeon bows his head humbly, telling the elder that such thanks are entirely unnecessary. He gently takes the old man's weathered hands into his own, the physical connection bridging the gap between the alliance and the people they protect. With a soft, sincere smile, Baeon admits that he should be the one apologizing for taking so long to fulfill his duty. The surrounding crowd begins to cheer, and one man steps forward to promise that they will all testify as witnesses to the gang's crimes. While Baeon shares a moment with the people, Baek stands over the wounded thug, remarking with chilling detachment that it must be his first time being stabbed. Baek looks down at the whimpering criminal as the sun sets over the town, asking him how it feels to finally experience the pain he has so carelessly inflicted on others. Baek digs his fingers into the thug's chest, ignoring the guy's screams of agony. He tells him to remember this exact pain before he ever thinks about drawing a blade again. He gives one last chilling warning. The guy can be stabbed just as easily at any moment. The crowd watching from the sidelines stands in stunned silence. With that, Baek just turns around and starts walking away. Baeon catches up and asks him if he has any regrets about what just happened. He doesn't wait for an answer, proudly declaring that he doesn't regret a single bit of it. Baek doesn't say much, just letting a small smile slip. He looks at Bayan and tells him he finally looks like a real warrior of the Alliance. The praise catches Bayan off guard, and he suddenly feels a huge weight lift off his shoulders. Beak keeps moving, telling him they'll have to save the drinks for later once the work is done. He warns the kid that he's going to be swamped from here on out and heads into town. Back at the Munseong branch, the peace is already gone as someone starts yelling inside. Beak is already there, looking over papers with his usual calm expression. Inside the office, branch manager Lim slams his desk, screaming at Bayon for making such a massive mess. Bayon stands his ground while his boss demands to know why he'd arrest the entire Tijeong faction. Lim rubs his temples in frustration, asking if Beak was the one who put him up to this. Bayon clenches his fist, but he doesn't waver. He thinks back to Beak's words about him finally acting like a true warrior. He keeps his jaw set, refusing to be intimidated by the yelling. He tells Lim it was his own choice to step in and stop their tyranny. Lim is shocked. He's never seen this kind of fire in Bayon's eyes before. He can't believe Beak managed to completely transform the kid in just a few days. Bayon doubles down, declaring his plan to transfer all the prisoners to the Steel Division. Lim warns him that the Steel Division will just let them go and slap him with disciplinary action. Bayon doesn't care, arguing that if the system is broken enough to punish him for catching criminals, then so be it. He tells his superior he'll take any punishment as long as he gets to take down the faction boss. Lim snaps, grabbing Bayon by the shirt and shouting that ideals don't mean anything in the real world. He tells him to snap out of it and stop being so reckless. He demands to know who's going to handle the fallout if Bayon gets himself killed. Lim warns him that he's not just risking his job, these people will kill him without a trace. He tells Bayon to stop throwing his life away on foolish bravado. Lim eventually lets go and tells him to stay put while he tries to clean this up with clan head Wang. But as he opens the door to leave, he stops dead in his tracks. The outer office is completely packed with townspeople who are finally ready to testify. Lim looks on in disbelief as he sees Beak in the middle of it all, already organizing the crowd. Beak tells the victims to write down everything those bastards have done to them. Lim watches them, completely speechless at the turn of events. Without saying a word, he turns around and walks out into the courtyard. Bayon finally lets out a long, shaky sigh of relief once the door closes. He realizes Beak didn't come in to help him with the boss because he was already out here getting to work. The elderly merchant bows gratefully to Bayon, finally feeling as though someone is truly on their side. Bayon tries to keep a straight face as the pressure in the room starts to climb. A hand slams against the desk, and a voice demands to know if the branch manager is in. Bayon's stomach drops when he sees the face of the man who just barged in. It's Tijeong, the boss of the Tijeong faction, and he looks like he's looking for trouble. Bayon tells himself to keep his cool and not let these thugs see him sweat. He stands his ground, informing the boss that the branch manager is out for the moment. Tijeong scans the room, mockingly asking what everyone is so busy writing down. He spots Beak helping the locals record every instance of assault and extortion. Tijeong gets right in their space, asking whose money his boys supposedly stole. The merchants can barely even look at him, trembling in their seats. Beak stays perfectly still, his eyes cold as he watches the scene play out. An elder finally snaps, shouting that every cent went into the boss's pocket, even medicine money for a sick kid. Tijeong doesn't yell back. He just leans in and mentions the man's daughter living in Shanxi. The threat hits home, and the elder is suddenly paralyzed with fear for his family. The boss adds that it wouldn't take his men long at all to go pay her a visit. He lets out a laugh, acting like the old man just misunderstood what protection fees are for. Bayon has seen enough and asks if they're just invisible to these thugs now. Tijeong scoffs, telling everyone to just go home before this misunderstanding gets worse. The boss shouts at the merchants, telling them all to shut their mouths and go back to their little stalls. Beak watches Bayon closely, waiting to see if the kid has the guts to step up again. Bayon catches his eye, and realizes Baek is leaving the entire choice up to him. He remembers how crazy it felt the last time he actually stood up and made an arrest. He decides that if he's already lost his mind, he might as well go all the way. He yells for everyone to stay put and finish their testimonies against the faction. The townspeople look up, caught between shock and a tiny bit of hope. A thug points at Bayan and tells his boss that this is the one who captured their subordinates earlier. Baek gives a slight, satisfied smirk from the sidelines. Taejeong walks over, laughing at the sheer nerve of a low-level warrior trying to play hero. He stops right in front of Bayan and tells him to release his men immediately. Bayan takes a breath, feeling a strange sense of calm now that he's made up his mind. He looks the boss in the eye and officially places him under arrest for witness intimidation. The entire office goes silent as Taejeong stares back in pure disbelief. One of the thugs starts laughing, convinced the kid has finally lost it. Taejeong's expression turns murderous as his hand drops to the hilt of his sword. He asks Bayan if he's really that eager to die today. His grip tightens on the hilt, ready to draw. Bayan knows the boss is far stronger than him, but he doesn't flinch. That's when Baek speaks up, giving a flat warning, "Draw that sword and you die." He explains the law. Drawing a blade inside an alliance building after a warning is a legal death sentence. He adds that the rule is strictly enforced, with absolutely no exceptions. Baek looks at Bayan with a smirk and asks if he agrees with that assessment. Baek So Cheon lays out the law. Draw a sword inside the alliance building, and the guards are legally permitted to kill you. He flips through his paperwork, nodding that this rule is strictly enforced with zero exceptions. He looks up with a slight smirk and asks squad leader Bayan if he's right. Bayan is caught off guard. Baek has been quiet this whole time, so he wonders why the sudden change. The kid stammers out a yes, while the local thug, Taejeong, mocks them for being out of their depth. Taejeong draws his blade with a grin, daring the newcomer to do something about it. Baek immediately screams that it's a surprise attack and orders everyone to protect the witnesses. He doesn't hesitate. He's already in the air, launching himself over a chair. A heavy kick comes crashing down like a hammer. Baek lands with a cold, hollow look in his eyes. Taejeong takes the hit full force, blood spraying as he's slammed into the ground. The impact sends up a massive cloud of dust as the floorboards splinter. Baek stands tall in the silence that follows, the threat neutralized in a single move. Bayan rushes over, completely bewildered by how quickly things escalated. He checks the guy's neck for a pulse, hands shaking. He looks up, pale as a ghost. The man is dead. Taejeong is gone, eyes blank and jaw slack. Baek just stands there, watching the aftermath without a hint of regret. He casually scratches his head and wonders if the guy just hit his head too hard on the way down. As night falls over the branch office, the tension finally starts to settle. Bayan walks the grounds alone, worried about what branch manager Lim will say when he finds out. Even though the death was officially ruled an accident, the young squad leader can't shake the feeling that something else was going on. He remembers Baek's expression, the way he specifically reminded everyone of his low rank to goad the opponent. It was a trap. Baek provoked the man into drawing first just so he could deliver that fatal kick. Looking at Baek's calm face, Bayan realizes this wasn't luck. Everything was handled within legal bounds, leaving no room for the alliance to complain. He decides he needs to hear the truth directly from the man himself. As he approaches the courtyard, he hears the sound of heavy breathing and stops in his tracks. His eyes go wide. He can't believe what he's seeing. There's Baek performing one-handed handstand push-ups with a body that looks way too powerful for his age. But it's the scars that really stand out, horrific, jagged lines that look like they almost split his torso in half. Bayan can't help but let out a dry laugh. The man is training like a demon despite those wounds. It's a sight he hasn't seen in a long time. A martial artist pushing their limits until they're drenched in sweat. It's exactly what he once aspired to be. Overwhelmed by respect, he calls out to him as brother. Baek stops his training and drops back down to the dirt. He wipes some sweat away and asks Bayan what he just said. Without a word, Baeon brings his hands together in a formal salute. He bows deeply, asking to serve Baek as his sworn brother. His face is dead serious. This isn't just a whim, he's found someone worth following. Baek lets out a tired sigh, the moonlight catching the massive scars across his chest. He's not interested in being a role model, and just tells the kid to go back to bed. Baek So Cheon scoffs at the request, saying if he accepted everyone, he'd have over 1,000 little brothers by now. He pulls his robes back on and asks the persistent kid why he even wants to be his brother. Squad leader Baeon admits he's living pathetically right now, but his dream was always to join the elite Iron Sword Corps. To him, meeting someone like Baek is a heaven-sent chance to actually turn his life around. Baek bluntly tells him that changing a life is never that easy while he finishes dressing. Baeon is ready to work for it, even taking Baek's casual tone as a sign that he's already being accepted as family. The master just sighs and tells him to go to sleep. He's used up years' worth of energy in one day. With a cheerful good night, Baeon heads off, leaving Baek alone under the crescent moon. Later, the young squad leader wonders if there was a hidden intention behind the killing, but decides it's no longer important. Morning breaks, and the worry about the branch manager's reaction to Taejeong's death still hangs in the air. Inside the office, branch manager Lim slams a scroll down, surprisingly admitting that things worked out well. He notes that since the Taejeong faction caused a ruckus at the branch, they've clearly crossed the line and have no legal defense. In his eyes, it was actually a blessing that Baek didn't end up meeting the clan head directly. However, he's not entirely convinced. Even a thug like Taejeong wouldn't be dumb enough to attack first without a motive. He narrows his eyes, trying to see past the newcomer's calm exterior. Lim asks point-blank if Baek intentionally manufactured the whole situation. Before Baek can answer, Baeon jumps in with a laugh, saying his brother was just following the law against a man with a bad temper. The manager freezes, staring at the kid in pure disbelief when he hears him call Baek brother. Baek stays silent, letting the absurdity of the moment settle in the room. Lim finally tells the kid to head out so he can have a private word with the silver-haired warrior. Once they're alone, the atmosphere in the room shifts as Lim turns his full attention to his mysterious subordinate. He warns Baek to stay away from Baeon, calling the kid too naive to be involved in whatever plans Baek has. He leans in, demanding that Baek stop swaying his men. Baek just asks if Lim is more worried about the kid or about losing a convenient subordinate to use. The manager starts to retort, but he's stopped cold by the newcomer's steady, piercing look. Those eyes are far too calm, making Lim feel like he's the one under pressure. He can't find the words to continue, so he just tells Baek to leave the room. After the door closes, Lim lets out a long breath, finally admitting to himself that he's the one being swayed. He realizes he was almost swaying himself, nearly losing control of his words. He admits to himself that even he is being affected by this mysterious man's presence. Out in the busy marketplace, the news of the branch incident has already become the talk of the town. Rumors are flying about how Taejeong marched into the branch to find his men and never came out. People are shocked to hear he was killed by accident by some unknown newcomer who was just hired. A horse gallops through the market as the gossip continues to spread. They wonder how a wolf like Taejeong could possibly fall to some random recruit. Most assume he must have just been incredibly unlucky to run into someone like that. Inside the carriage speeding through the marketplace, clan head Wang Gon pulls back the curtain, returning home to news of the chaos. He hears that the local merchants are actually celebrating now that the Taejeong faction is gone. His man mentions that branch manager Lim even dropped by while Wang Gon was away. Wang Gon is furious, questioning how the manager could have let things get this far out of control. Hyuksu mentions that Jongbi is still locked up in the dungeon and was supposed to take over for the dead man. With a creepy, wide grin, Hyuksu suggests he pay a visit to the manager to ask for his release. Wang Gon stops his bloodthirsty subordinate, telling him not to cause trouble when there's important work ahead. Hyuksu just lets out a jagged, silent laugh, his mind already lingering on the violence to come. Narrowing his eyes, The clan head insists that situations like these must be handled with a certain level of elegance. He tells the assassin that he has a specific errand for him, as their carriage rolls through the misty grounds. Meanwhile, back at the local Murim Alliance branch, the usual quiet of the office is interrupted. A subordinate announces that the branch manager's wife has arrived, leaving Lim visibly confused. A worried-looking woman enters the room, clutching a small wooden box with a young boy trailing close behind her. Branch manager Lim rushes over, asking what could have possibly brought his family all the way out to the office. She looks up with an anxious expression, explaining that she came because of the item in her hands. She tells him that some strange men barged into their home and left the box behind before disappearing. Terrified that the men might return, she couldn't bring herself to leave young Chan at home alone. As Lim takes the box, he remains silent, the weight of the situation clearly beginning to press down on him. The manager stares at the wooden container, the gravity of the threat etched into the lines of his face. He finally speaks, forcing a calm expression and telling his wife that everything is fine. From his desk, Baek So Cheon watches the interaction with his usual detached, observant gaze. He catches a whiff of a very specific, sweet scent drifting from the wooden container. Without even looking up from his scrolls, he identifies the contents, a rare and expensive 100-year fleeciflower. Lim tries to maintain a normal tone, patting the boy's head and telling him to look after his mother. The young boy gives a cheerful answer, completely unaware of the deadly tension filling the room. He follows his mother out, giving a small, innocent smile as he leaves the office. Baek gives a subtle nod of acknowledgement as the manager's family departs. Lim stands by the doorway for a moment, watching them walk away with a heavy heart. His grip on the box tightens until his knuckles turn white, his internal rage finally reaching a boiling point. He curses Wang Gon under his breath, realizing the man has transitioned from subtle bribes to an open threat against his family. He remembers the last time he stood before the corrupt clan head, his hand firmly rejecting a similar offering. At the time, he had tried to be polite, thinking a respectful refusal would be the end of the matter. He can't believe the audacity of the man to target his household after he had already made his stance clear. Fueled by a desperate protective instinct, Lim announces he's going to see Wang Gon and orders his men to stay put. Squad leader Bayon watches his superior storm out in a daze, shocked by the sudden and intense display of anger. He turns to Baek, wondering why the manager is so furious when he thought the two leaders were on decent terms. Baek explains that such a high-tier medicinal herb is never just a gift, it's either a bribe or a warning. He reasons that since Lim lost his temper before even looking inside, he must have been expecting exactly this. Since the family was used as leverage, Baek notes that the situation is about to get much more violent. Bayon is stunned, unable to comprehend how Baek could identify the gift without so much as a glance at it. Realizing the mortal danger Lim is walking into, the young squad leader decides he can't just sit around. He knows that challenging Wang Gon means inevitably crossing paths with Hyuksu, the shadow assassin. Hyuksu is a master on a completely different level than the thugs they dealt with earlier. Bayon realizes that a ruthless monster like that kills as easily as breathing, and going alone would be suicide. He turns to the silver-haired warrior with hopeful eyes, asking if his brother is planning to join the rescue. Baek So Cheon doesn't even look away from his paperwork, coldly asking why he would bother getting involved. Bayon is outraged, shouting that a fellow member of the Alliance is in danger and needs immediate help. Baek remains unmoved, reminding the boy that they've only known each other for a few days, hardly long enough to be coworkers. Bayon tries to argue their friendship, but Baek shuts him down, pointing out that every second wasted brings his manager closer to death. The realization hits the young squad leader like a physical blow, leaving him momentarily speechless. He imagines the worst, Lim being cornered by the ruthless clan head and his bloodthirsty assassin, just like those before him. Bayon can't take the tension anymore and storms out of the room, determined to save his superior at any cost. He stops in his tracks just outside the door, suddenly questioning why he's even pleading with someone as cold as Baek. fueling himself with newfound authority. Bayon turns back and shouts that he's commanding Baek to move out as his superior officer. Baek remains unbothered, calmly rolling up the documents he was reviewing as if he hadn't heard a word. Bayon swallows hard, his bravado quickly fading as he realizes the dangerous gamble he's taking by ordering a man of Baek's reputation. He begins to panic, remembering that Baek wasn't just demoted for assault, but for blatant insubordination as well. Looking at the silver-haired warrior's steady hands, Bayon realizes that rank means absolutely nothing to someone like him. Baek looks up with a thin, mocking smile, acknowledging the kid's desperate attempt to assert dominance. At the same time, Wang Gan watches with a predatory grin as his trap begins to close around the manager. Branch manager Lim arrives at the clan's manor, his face a mask of cold fury as he prepares for the confrontation. The corrupt clan head offers a mockingly polite greeting, though the tension between the two men is thick enough to cut with a blade. Lim doesn't waste time with pleasantries, making it clear that while he followed the rules before, this meeting is far from professional. Lim slams the treasure box onto the table. He's here to return the gift he never wanted. Wang Gan just laughs. He didn't expect the manager to actually go through the trouble of bringing it back. He keeps poking the bear, asking why Lim didn't just give the flower to his kid like he was told. Then he goes for the throat, questioning if Lim is being cold because the boy isn't even his own flesh and blood. Lim snaps. He yells at the clan head to keep his mouth shut about his family. But Wang Gan's gang is on a roll. Hyuksu makes a comment about how beautiful Lim's wife is, mocking him for raising another man's son. He leans back with a disgusting grin, saying he'd love to see her for himself. That's the breaking point. Lim draws his sword and charges. But he isn't alone. Hyuksu's eyes glow red as he moves to intercept. In a blur of motion, the assassin easily parries the strike. Something hits the floor, its Lim's top knot sliced clean off. The blade is already at his throat. Lim can't even process how fast he was beaten. Hyuksu asks his boss if they should just finish him off and stage an accident, just like what happened to Taejeong earlier. The assassin looms over him, waiting for the word to kill. Wang Gan has a better idea. He decides to pin the whole thing on the monster who wiped out the Yangchu family. He slams his fists down, laying out the frame-up. Lim was silenced for investigating the background. Lim stares in horror. He finally realizes Hyuksu is the one who committed those murders in the first place. Wang Gan just grins, taunting him with the truth. Hyuksu doesn't look like he plans on leaving any witnesses behind. Wang Gan offers one way out, if the branch manager gets down on his knees and begs. He might just find it in his heart to let the guy go home in one piece. He leans in, asking what it's going to be. Lim is trapped. He knows he can't win this fight. The weight of the decision is crushing him as he thinks of his wife and son. He reflects on his time in the Alliance, feeling like he's done nothing but play the fool. If holding on to his honor didn't protect his family, then what's the point of keeping it now? He starts to sink toward the dirt, ready to sacrifice his dignity. He stares at the ground, his spirit broken. But then a voice cuts through the room. Baek So Cheon and Bayon have arrived, walking right into the heart of the enemy's den. Lim is completely stunned, wondering how these two even found the place. Baek looks at his broken boss and reminds him that Alliance warriors follow orders. He just needs one command to start making arrests. Baek's had enough of the talk. To him, this town is just full of people making empty threats, even against the Alliance. He looks at his boss and tells him to just give the order to arrest them already. Clan head Wang isn't intimidated. He recognizes Baek as the rookie who took out Taejeong. He laughs, complaining that he can't even run his business without the Murim Alliance breathing down his neck. In his eyes, they're just nobodies trying to throw their weight around in his territory. He smirks, thinking this actually works out perfectly for him. He tells the rookies to stay and watch their manager get on his knees. Lim and Bayon are completely stunned by the disrespect. Squad leader Bayon seeing snaps. He's not going to let some local thug insult his superior and the Alliance. He draws his sword, demanding to know if Wang really thinks he can get away with this. Before he can even move, Hyuksu is suddenly right in front of him. Baeon's eyes go wide as he realizes he's outmatched. The bodyguard's expression is cold and focused. A single, heavy strike lands right in the squad leader's chest. Wang just gloats. He knows with Hyuksu by his side, he's untouchable. Baeon is down. Lim rushes to his side while Baek just stands there observing the scene. Baek calmly lists the crimes: threats, bribery, and now assaulting a martial artist. He looks back at Lim. Are you going to give the order or what? Lim is sweating. He can't wrap his head around how Baek can stay so calm after seeing Baeon get crushed. He remembers Baek saying he wasn't in any condition to fight. Baek clarifies he was only speaking by his own high standards. He certainly wasn't using these maggots as a benchmark for what a real fighter is. Hyuksu's face twitches. He clearly doesn't like being called a maggot. Lim realizes the situation just went from bad to worse. He knows Hyuksu's reputation. The guy is known for butchering people over the smallest insults. The bodyguard steps forward, his killing intent filling the room. Lim is on the verge of breakdown, thinking his only choice is to beg for Baek's life. But Baek doesn't back down. He just corrects himself, calling them an old maggot and a young maggot. Lim just stares in shock as the tension reaches a breaking point. Wang leans in, addressing the branch manager directly. He screams that this is Lim's last chance to get on his knees and save himself. Lim repeats the words to himself, last chance. He realizes Wang is right. This really is his last chance. But it's not a chance to save his life by being a coward. It's his last chance to actually uphold his pride as a warrior. Lim stands tall and shouts the order, "Warrior Baek, arrest them." Baeon looks up in awe as Baek starts walking toward the thugs. Baek repeats the charges, officially placing Wang and Hyuksu under arrest. Wang's face goes dark. He realizes they're done talking. Hyuksu lunges forward, aiming to tear right through Baek. A massive strike connects, sending a shockwave through the room. Lim and Baeon can only scream out for Baek as the impact settles. Hyuksu's attack doesn't even make Baek flinch. He catches the bodyguard's fist mid-lunge without breaking a sweat. Clan head Wang doesn't even realize what happened. He's still calmly sipping his tea, thinking about how he'd love to kill all three of them, but settling for just one death will serve as a good enough warning. He's already planning his next move, making Lim Chung watch his subordinate die so he can use that guilt to blackmail the manager into being his slave. But his daydream is cut short by a sudden, sickening smack that echoes through the room. Baek hasn't just caught the bodyguard's strike. He's currently slamming the man face first into the floor. The brutal impact shatters the floorboards and sends splinters flying everywhere. Hyuksu is hammered into the ground with enough force to turn the furniture behind him into kindling. Lim and Baeon can only stare in stunned silence at the raw power on display. Baek stands up calmly, dusting off his sleeves as he adds attempted murder to the growing list of charges. The office is a total mess of smoke and broken wood. Hyuksu is out cold, and Wang is finally starting to realize he's in serious trouble. The clan head is sweating bullets. He can't wrap his head around how his top fighter was dismantled in a single move. He looks at Baek's cold expression and starts to wonder if Taejeong's death really was just an accident. Desperate, he tries to pull rank, threatening that his main gang won't just sit by and watch if he's touched. Baek isn't buying it. He suggests the main gang would likely just replace an idiot who caused this much trouble for them. Wang loses what's left of his composure, swearing at the rookie who just shattered his sense of security. He screams about his high-level connections, shouting his own name as if it still carried any weight in this room. Baek just stares him down and tells him to listen carefully. A terrifying tiger aura manifests behind Baek, filling the entire office. He asks if playing king in this backwater town made Wang forget that the Murim alliance is no joke. Baek's silhouette looms over the terrified man. He promises him 30 years in a dungeon and reminds him that no connection will protect him from a war with the alliance. He grabs the guy by the front of his expensive purple robes, and Wang can only beg him to let go. Baek reaches for the heavy pearl necklace Wang's so proud of, mentioning how Taejeong was unlucky to die from a single blow to the head. His eyes glow with a cold, predatory light, as he wonders aloud just how lucky the clan head is going to be today. The man screams in absolute terror as he's hauled up. Beak slams him headfirst into the floor with a bone-chilling thud. The massive pearl necklace shatters under the pressure, pearls flying in every direction. Pearls scatter across the floor like a physical representation of Wang's broken status. The leader of the Divine Fire Gang is left face down and unconscious on the trashed carpet. Beak turns back to the manager, reporting that both targets have been arrested exactly as ordered. Lim and Baeyeon are still trying to process the level of violence they just witnessed. Beak doesn't wait for a response, he just starts walking out of the trashed office. Once they're outside, Beak tells Lim it was a foolish move to come alone, but he gives him credit for not taking the bribe. Lim stops in his tracks, stunned that the rookie somehow knew about the 100-year fleeceflower. The two of them watch in silence as Beak continues walking down the corridor. Baeyeon can't help but repeat that line about the alliance being more than a joke. Lim cracks a small, genuine smile for the first time in a while. Squad leader Baeyeon looks like he's just found a new idol to follow. He's so pumped he even invites Lim to join them as a sworn brother, claiming they're a man short for the blood oath. Lim tells him to drop the nonsense and help clean up. He knows that while they won the fight, arresting a local gang leader is going to be a political disaster. Night falls over the branch office. Later that night, Beak finds himself walking through a dark, empty courtyard. He looks down as his boots splash into a dark, ink-like liquid on the ground. He looks up at the sky, confused by the strange, black rain that's starting to fall. Baek So Cheon looks up, blood spattered across his face, as a strange, black rain begins to fall in his vision. He stands alone in a vast, dark abyss, watching the unnatural downpour soak the ground around him. He looks down, his expression heavy with a grim and silent realization. In his hands, he grips the shattered hilt of a sword, wondering how his legendary ghost shadow sword could have been broken. A dark fog settles over his consciousness as he struggles to find answers in the void. He collapses to his knees, a massive, jagged hole visible in the center of his chest where his strength used to reside. A shadowy figure looms over him, its voice echoing with a cruel prophecy about a 3-year limit. The dream entity's massive hand reaches down from the darkness, plucking Beak from the ground like a helpless toy. The entity tells him that in 3 years, he will understand the weight of its cryptic words. A giant, glowing eye stares him down, promising that the truth will be revealed in due time. With a sudden surge of terrifying power, the giant hand crushes Beak, sending a spray of dark liquid everywhere. Beak's eyes snap open in the real world as he jolts awake from the lingering nightmare. He sits up in his bed, gasping for air as the terror of the vision slowly begins to fade. He clutches his chest, feeling the real scars that painfully match the wound from his dream. Shifting from his nightmare to reality, Beak's hand grips the jagged edge of a sheer cliff face. Under the cover of night, he hangs perilously over a deep chasm, his muscles straining with every move. He pulls himself up with grim determination, reflecting on the 3 years he spent pushing his body to its absolute limits. He remembers the early days after his injury, when even small gains in physical strength felt like a victory. His fingers slip on the loose rock, a stark reminder of the physical limitations he has yet to overcome. He quickly catches himself, his focus sharpening as he fights against the exhaustion threatening to pull him down. The extreme danger of his training is no accident. It's the only way he knows how to break past his current state. With one final heave, he pulls himself over the edge and onto the safety of the cliff top. He lies flat on the cold ground, gasping for breath as he curses the slow and agonizing progress of his recovery. Frustration boils over as he screams at the night sky, exhausted by the endless cycle of grueling training. He looks out over the dark landscape, feeling the immense weight of his seemingly impossible goal. In a moment of total exhaustion, he vows to quit the brutal training, swearing he's done with the pain. He stares up at the vast night sky, his anger slowly giving way to a quiet, weary contemplation. The silence of the mountain top surrounds him as he tries to calm his racing heart. The words from his nightmare return to haunt him, repeating the 3-year deadline that hangs over his head. He realizes that the voice in his dream might be more than just a memory. It's a direct challenge to his existence. He scoffs at the idea of fate, refusing to let a haunting dream dictate the terms of his future. Baek So Cheon pushes himself back up, his resolve hardening once again despite the fatigue. He stares into the distance, vowing to prove that the entity's words are nothing but bogus lies. He reaches into his bag, ready to continue his work despite his earlier outburst. He adjusts the heavy equipment on his limbs, knowing that every burden is a step toward regaining his power. From his side, he pulls out a weathered, ancient-looking manual with a serious expression. He looks at the title, The Art of the Immovable King, a secret manual he obtained during his days as the best under heaven. He has studied these pages countless times, searching for a way to restore his shattered dantian. Even though it has yet to show any effect, he knows he has no choice but to keep trying. He flips through the worn pages, his eyes scanning the cryptic instructions for any detail he might have missed. As the sun begins to rise, Baek remains on the cliffside, struggling to decipher the complex martial techniques. Morning light hits the roof of the branch office as the town of Munseong begins a new day. Baek So Cheon returns to the branch office as the morning sun rises, spotting Bae Seeing near the entrance. Bae Seeing turns in surprise, calling out to Baek and wondering why he's out so early. Standing in the courtyard, Bae reveals that he's decided to start his own training today. Baek listens quietly as Bae admits he isn't sure where to begin and hopes for some advice. Noticing Baek's weary look, Bae realizes his big brother has likely been training all through the night. Bae explains that the excitement of yesterday's arrests kept him awake, his mind still racing with the events. Baek So Cheon reminds him of his purpose, asking if he's actually going to start training or just keep talking. Bae Seeing perks up instantly, his enthusiasm restored by Baek's bluntness. Sparrows chirp on a nearby branch as the day begins in earnest for the members of the branch. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit interrogation room, a single lantern flickers against the dark walls. Clan head Wang sits alone at a wooden table, his powerful presence dimmed by his current situation. Bandages wrap around Wang's eyes, hiding the injuries sustained during the previous day's conflict. The heavy door creaks open, allowing a beam of morning light to cut through the shadows. Branch manager Lim enters the room, formally announcing the start of the official investigation. Clan head Wang's face tightens, beads of sweat forming on his brow as the gravity of his situation sinks in. The image of a fierce tiger looms in Wang's mind, a terrifying symbol of the man who defeated him. Lim Chung prepares the documents, his movements precise and professional. He begins listing the serious charges against the clan head: bribery, assault, and intimidation. Wang Gan smirks through his pain, identifying Lim as the one behind the legal push against him. Losing his patience, Wang slams his fists onto the table, demanding they get to the point. He scoffs at the charges, claiming he never committed such acts and that a 30-year sentence is ridiculous. With a low, threatening voice, he questions if Lim has forgotten the power and influence he still wields. Lim Chung remains unmoved, nodding that since Wang won't confess, he will be transferred to a higher division. Enraged by the prospect of losing control, clan head Wang bellows that Lim must have truly lost his mind. Clan head Wang Gan, face wrapped in bandages, slams his fist on the table. He's demanding to be taken to someone who can clear these wrongful charges. Outside, squad leader Bae peeks through the door, calling for branch manager Lim to come out for a second. Lim turns his head, his face showing the weight of the situation. He's shocked to hear that the venomous viper has just shown up at their branch office. Bae explains that the guy was sent from the main division, specifically because of the Yangchu family incident. Lim rubs his neck, wishing this high-ranking trouble hadn't arrived today. Bae points him out as he walks in. A silhouette enters the office while the two men watch from a distance. Unit Captain Chen Yang Ho makes a grand entrance, immediately complaining that they didn't report Wang's arrest to the higher-ups. This is the man known as the Venomous Viper, and he demands an audience with the prisoner immediately. Baeyeon looks incredibly nervous, while Lim stays silent behind him. In a quiet corner of the building, scrolls hang on the wall. Jin sits down across from the battered Wang, asking if his top bodyguard got caught in the crossfire too. Wang admits that branch manager Lim shouldn't have been skilled enough to take them down. He tells the captain it was someone new, a guy who felt like he belonged in the main division's elite ranks. Wang looks at the dusty corners of his cell, declaring he can't stand being in this dump a minute longer. Jin listens intently and promises he'll do what he can to handle it. Wang isn't satisfied with a promise and grabs the captain's arm. He leans in, reminding Chen that all those bribes he's been paying were for a moment just like this. Chen breaks into a smug, knowing grin. He calls Lim into the room to discuss the case. The captain walks around, explaining that Wang is denying everything and claiming he only acted in self-defense. He warns Lim that the clan head is planning to report them for illegal intrusion and false accusations. Chen's eyes narrow as he suggests it would be best for everyone to just release the prisoner now. Lim stares back, asking if the captain actually trusts a criminal over his own officers. Chen lets out a fake laugh, claiming he trusts the branch manager completely. But his tone turns cold as he brings up the massive influence the Divine Fire Gang has over the province. He tells Lim to act like an adult and wrap up this trivial matter to keep things pleasant. The captain turns to leave, considering the matter closed. Lim stands there, repeating the phrase, trivial matter, with pure disgust in his voice. He knew the alliance was corrupt, but seeing it face-to-face still feels like a slap. Chin pauses at the doorway. He looks back, admitting that even with help, taking down someone like Wang Gon shouldn't have been that easy. Lim tells him not to underestimate the capabilities of his branch office. Chin just smirks at the manager's defiance. He tells them to think long and hard about their next move as he walks off. Baeyeon stands by, watching the corrupt official disappear down the hall. Lim looks deep in thought, clearly weighing his options against a system rigged against him. He looks at his squad leader and asks how his morning training went. Baeyeon is caught off guard, wondering how the manager even knew he was out practicing. Later that night, the moon hangs high over the branch headquarters. Unable to sleep because of the mounting pressure, Lim walks through the courtyard to clear his head. He finds Baeyeon still awake, swinging a wooden sword with everything he's got. Baeyeon continues his relentless practice in the center of the courtyard. Lim watches from the shadows, noticing a new level of focus in the squad leader's movements. The manager's expression softens as he realizes just how much his subordinate has changed. Baeyeon finally lowers his sword and smiles, admitting that talking to Big Brother always makes everything feel clear. Morning arrives, with the sun's first rays hitting the traditional eaves of the branch office. Still energized, Baeyeon gestures for Lim to follow him, certain that Baek So Cheon will have a way to fix their current situation. Lim remains skeptical, doubting that a low-ranking officer could have any answers for something this big. But with no other options on the table, he finally decides to go along with it. They find Baek So Cheon tucked away in a room full of books, looking perfectly at peace. He doesn't even look up from his page as he asks why they're bothering him with their questions. Baek So Cheon looks up from his book, wondering why Baeyeon is even bringing this up to him. Baeyeon points out that since they were the ones who made the arrest, it's their problem. He's worried because if they don't act fast, they're going to have to let the criminal go. Baek doesn't seem to care. He thinks once they hand him over to the main division, it's out of their hands. Baeyeon explains that the big shot from the division, Chen Yang-ho, is already on the criminal's side. He's terrified that if Wang Gon gets released, he'll come looking for some violent payback. Baek has a pretty cold solution. Just wait for the guy to try something, then kill him legally. Baeyeon and I-am Chung just stand there, stunned by how casually he said that. Baeyeon brings up the possibility of the guy hearing an assassin, and Baek just shrugs it off like it's a valid plan. Baeyeon is frustrated, asking if any of this actually concerns him. Baek looks him in the eye and tells him straight up, the branch's business is its own, and he has his own to worry about. Branch manager I.M. Chung takes that in without saying a word. He closes his eyes, thinking about the mess they're in. I.M. Chung finally thanks him for the help they've already gotten, and Baek tells them not to worry about what's coming. Baeyeon is still lost, wondering how Beek is going to pull that off. Chung changes the subject to a massacre involving the Yang Chu family, which the main division is also watching. Beek goes back to reading, tapping his book rhythmically. He listens as Chung explains that the case started right when Beek arrived in town. In a single night, a legendary hero and his entire household were slaughtered under a red moon. They didn't even spare the children. Bae-un sighs, thinking about how brutal the whole incident was. He's still not seeing the connection between a mass murder and the thug they just arrested. Chung reveals the threat he got, convinced there's more to it. Apparently, the criminal threatened to kill Chung, and then framed the Yang Chu killer for the murder. Beek points out that nobody makes a specific threat like that unless they know something they shouldn't. Chung recalls that even close friends of the victims were absolutely paralyzed with fear during the investigation. He's positive the Shinhwa gang was the one doing the threatening. Bae-un doesn't get why a massive sect like that would even bother with this. Chung tells him the reason doesn't matter yet. They just need solid evidence. Bae-un is stumped, asking where they're even supposed to start looking. Beek asks if there's any other group that's been keeping tabs on the Shinhwa gang. That question sparks something in Chung. He remembers the Hyo family sword clan has been watching the gang like hawks. Beek closes his eyes, satisfied. The enemy of his enemy is exactly what he needs. Bae-un gets pumped up, ready to charge out and get to work. He calls Beek his brother and runs off, convinced he's got all the answers. Beek watches them go, silent as ever. He thinks to himself that if he actually had all the answers, he wouldn't be stuck in this low-ranking position. The sun shines over the quiet roofs of the Murim Alliance. Back in the office, the team continues their strategy session. Beek explains that the Shinhwa gang has been using an iron workshop as their main front. And it turns out Yang Chu was investigating that exact business right before he was killed. Chung explains that because Yang Chu was investigating for a rival clan, the Shinhwa gang is the prime suspect. But there's a catch. They only have circumstantial evidence and nothing decisive to back it up. Bae-un can't wrap his head around why an investigation would justify wiping out an entire family. Chung is certain the man must have stumbled onto a secret he was never supposed to see. Baek So Cheon notes that the gang likely staged the massacre to look like a personal grudge, while sending a brutal message. It's a clear warning. Anyone who gets in their way ends up dead. Beek finds it odd that they're running an iron workshop in a location where the logistics would only cause them massive losses. Their discussion is cut short when a guard announces that squad leader Chen wants to see Beek in the interrogation room. Bae-un immediately gets protective, warning Beek that the room is designed to pressure people into making mistakes. Beek isn't worried at all. He tells him an interrogation room feels more familiar to him than his own bedroom. Bae-un rolls his eyes, thinking he's just bragging again about his glory days in some dungeon. Beek smiles, mentioning that most of those people are dead now, except for two, and one of them is a heavy drinker. Bae-un snaps that this isn't the time for one of his tall tailies. He watches him go with a worried brother. Chung puts a hand on the younger man's shoulder, telling him not to worry and to let Beek handle it. He's confident that Beek isn't the type to go down from a simple snake bite like squad leader Chen. Inside, Chen Yang-ho sits across from him and asks if he was really part of the elite iron sword unit. Beek confirms it, and when asked for his rank, he casually reveals he was a team leader. Chen's eyes narrow as he repeats the title back to him, clearly evaluating the threat. He realizes that if Beek was a leader in such an elite group, subduing someone like Black Hand wouldn't be a problem. Chen mentions the reports saying Black Hand was taken out with a single blow, which shows a massive gap in skill. He brings up how Beek identified a rare root without even opening its box. Beek just says he smelled it. Chen compliments his nose, but Beek retorts that his eyesight is actually even better. Chen tells him to stick to answering the questions and notes that he's already made quite a name for himself with the Shinhwa gang. He warns Beek that the gang might report him for using excessive force during the arrest. Beek leans back, completely unfazed by the threat of a report. Instead of defending himself, he drops a bomb. He knows the Shinhwa gang has been bribing martial artists in Chen's own division. He looks Chen right in the eye and asks if he knows anything about that. Chen is visibly shaken, demanding to know where Beek got that kind of information. Beek tells him it doesn't matter and suggests he should start inspecting his own men if he wants to prove him wrong. Chen stays silent, the weight of the accusation hanging heavy in the room. Beek adds that once the gang leader's guilt is proven, everyone on the payroll is going down with him. Chen realizes he's in over his head. He feels like he's the one being interrogated by a professional. Beek stands up to leave, having completely dismantled Chen's attempt at pressure. Chen quickly ends the session, clearing his throat and saying they'll stop for the day. Outside, Bae Seeing and Chung rush over, but Beek just tells them about the threat of the excessive force report. Bae Seeing panics again, fearing that without hard evidence, the criminals will be walking free very soon. Chung looks determined, promising to do whatever he can to stall for more time. He's willing to put everything on the line to keep them behind bars. As they walk, Beek remains quiet, lost in his own thoughts about the situation. Beek suddenly stops and says it's because of him that things have escalated this far. He looks off into the distance, knowing the real battle is only just beginning. Bae Seeing clenches his fist in frustration, feeling responsible for the current complications because he was the one who raided the Tijiang gang. Beek quickly tries to reassure Bae Seeing, insisting that the blame lies entirely with the maggots of the gang, not the young man. He tells Bae Seeing that those people only look out for themselves, and that he shouldn't waste any more time blaming himself. Beek looks down with a stern gaze, warning Bae that while it's one thing to be a pushover, he shouldn't cross the line into being an idiot. Bae Seeing's worry vanishes, replaced by a bright smile as he chirps, "Yes, brother." The two stand together in the quiet office, the weight of their upcoming task hanging in the air. Bae Seeing comments to himself about how their brother has a habit of appearing exactly when he's needed. As night falls, a horse-drawn carriage makes its way through a dense, dark forest. Inside the carriage, squad leader Chen sits in silence, his sharp eyes fixed on the path ahead. He meets with Wang Wu ***, a fierce-looking man with messy black hair and thick eyebrows, who is the son of the imprisoned clan head. Wang Wu is agitated, demanding to know how a lowly official like Chung managed to capture his powerful father. Chen explains that a man named Baek So Cheon, who was recently assigned to the Munseong branch, was the one responsible. He reveals that Beek is a former Iron Sword Unit team leader, suggesting Black Hand was simply caught off guard by his skill. Wang Wu is instantly enraged, swearing to kill Baek So Cheon right then and there. Chen stops him, warning that attacking now would only make his father's release even more difficult. He advises Wang Wu to focus on getting his father out of prison first, before trying to settle any personal scores. Wang Wu calms down slightly and asks when he can expect his father to be released. Chen assures him that he has already pulled some strings and that the release will happen soon. To show his gratitude, Wang Wu produces a heavy pouch, mentioning that he bought something special on his way back. He offers a bribe of gold to Chen, who puts on a show of mock modesty while accepting the payment. Chen tells him to go back and wait for the results of his maneuvering. Wang Wu starts to protest, but ultimately turns to leave the meeting. Before he goes, Chen asks if the Yang Chu family massacre was their doing. Wang Wu reacts with immediate outrage, denying any involvement and questioning what Chen takes them for. Chen dismisses it as excessive caution on his part and bids him farewell until next time. Alone in the dark, Wang Wu seethes with rage, calling the Murim Alliance members absolute scum. Chen walks away from the secret meeting, his footsteps the only sound in the quiet forest. He remains silent, the weight of the bribes and the conspiracy weighing on his mind. He thinks about Baek So Cheon, realizing that the former team leader is far more dangerous than he looks. A single drop of sweat rolls down his face as he curses the crazy Shinhwa gang bastards he's dealing with. Later at the branch office, Chung reflects on the bribe he was offered and knows things are about to get noisy. Bae Seeing is frozen in shock after hearing the news. He can't believe they are releasing Wang Gon and Black Hand after all the effort it took to catch them. Chung confirms it is his decision and warns Bae that his safety is also on the line. Bae Seeing's voice trembles as he asks if they are in serious danger. Chung admits they likely are, but argues the outcome would be the same even if they kept them locked up. He reflects on how the only witnesses to the bribe were himself and Chung's wife ***, a slender woman with long dark brown hair and a pink headband. Since the gang members were the ones beaten, it makes it incredibly difficult to prove assault or attempted murder. He knows that even if they are sent to the division headquarters, Chen Yang Ho will simply find a way to let them go. And even if they ended up in a dungeon, their first move upon release would be to try and assassinate them in revenge. He explains that they must release them now to lower their guard. His expression turns grim as he resolves to find clear evidence that Wang Gon is the culprit and finish them off for good. Bae Seeing gazes ahead with a look of intense focus as he processes the gravity of their plan. Chung stands resolutely at his desk, his presence filling the room as he finalizes the decision to release the prisoners. Chung comments on how much the branch manager has changed in such a short time. Bae Seeing admits that it would have been incredibly difficult to manage any of this without the help of his brother, Baek So Cheon. A calm voice interjects, doubting that things would have simply remained quiet without intervention. Bae-yeon looks up in surprise, caught off guard by the blunt observation. Chung reflects on the usual course of such events, an uproar followed by a quiet, forgotten end. But Baek So Cheon's arrival has disrupted that cycle, forcing both Chung and Bae-yeon to confront their own lives. He looks toward the window, acknowledging that they are far from the elite level of people like Baek. A close-up of Chung shows his somber realization that their world has become far more complex. Bae-yeon looks down, conceding that under normal circumstances, nothing would have ever changed for them. A lone leaf drifts to the floor, punctuating the heavy silence in the office. With renewed determination, Bae-yeon declares his intent to use this crisis as a catalyst for a new life. Chung offers a faint, approving smile, recognizing the spark of ambition in his subordinate. He reassures Bae-yeon that the transition into their new reality has already started. Chung gazes at the open sky, contemplating the arduous path of a true martial artist. The scene shifts to the wide courtyard of the Munseong branch office under the bright afternoon sun. Guards watch closely as the gates are opened for the two high-profile prisoners. Wang Gon, his face bruised and bandaged, seethes with a quiet fury as he promises never to forget his arrest. He calls for Black Hand to follow him, and the dark-haired assassin acknowledges the command with a sharp glance. Baek So Cheon, his long silver hair flowing, watches the criminals depart alongside his colleagues. Baek advises Chung to move his family into the safety of the branch office immediately. Chung clenches his fist in silent rage, recalling how Wang Gon targeted his family from the start. Baek notes that Black Hand's pride will make him a persistent threat, leaving Bae-yeon amazed at Baek's foresight and preparation. Baek So Cheon follows a simple rule: either ignore a problem completely or deal with it so thoroughly that it never comes back. He knows that skipping that last part is exactly how people end up getting stabbed in the back. Chung listens in silence, clearly weighed down by his own sense of duty and the danger his family now faces. Knowing the Shinhwa gang will retaliate, Chung decides it's time to bring his family into the safety of the branch office immediately. Young Chan looks up at the silver-haired warrior and asks if he has a family of his own. He thinks it's probably easier to be alone in times like these. Baek's answer is a short, blunt no. He doesn't elaborate, keeping his past as guarded as ever. As dusk settles over the branch, the manager makes sure his loved ones are settled into their temporary quarters. His wife looks at him with visible worry, her heart heavy with the uncertainty of their situation. Chung tells her not to worry and to just rest, even though he knows the rumors about the trouble he's in have already reached her. He catches a glimpse of the fear in her eyes, and it only strengthens his resolve. He promises her that no matter what happens, he'll make sure neither she nor Chan comes to any harm. She stares back at him, her silence speaking volumes about the fear she's trying to hide. She takes his hand, clutching it tightly as a silent show of support. She reminds him that they live and die together, and she's been prepared for this since the day they married. She tells him to do what he believes is right and not to hold back on her account. If the worst comes to pass, she'll face it by his side. Outside, the sun begins to set behind the manor walls, marking the start of a long, tense night. Little Chan sits with Baek So Cheon, asking the question every child in his position would. Will his father be okay? Baek doesn't sugarcoat it. He tells the boy that his father isn't doing well right now. He explains that taking down an entire underworld syndicate has put a massive target on his father's back. Chung watches from around the corner, listening to the conversation. Chan wonders if the rumors are true. Did his father really take down the Taejeong gang all by himself? Baek confirms it, saying his father couldn't just sit by and watch them hurt innocent people anymore. The boy thinks his father did the right thing. When Baek asks if he really thinks so, Chan mentions how the gang used to harass his friend's parents. He always felt bad just watching it happen. Hearing his son speak with such pride and conviction brings a faint look of emotion to Chung's face. Baek lets the kid in on a secret. There's an even bigger force in the martial world backing that syndicate. That's the real reason his father is in danger. Even knowing the risks, his father chose to act. That's the kind of bravery that puts a man in the crosshairs. Chan isn't scared, he's inspired. He tells Baek he wants to grow up to be just like his father. Baek tells him that if he wants to protect people like his father does, he'll need to train hard in the martial arts. Chung clears his throat, finally making his presence known. He steps out into the courtyard, having heard every word of his son's praise. The manager calls out to his son with a warm smile on his face. Chan lights up at the sight of his father, while Baek remains perfectly still. Chung tells the boy to head inside to his mother for now. Chan happily agrees and runs off. Beak keeps his expression neutral, waiting to see what the manager wants. Chung admits he overheard the conversation on his way out. He's clearly touched by what he heard. He thanks Beak for his kind words, admitting he didn't realize how much his boy had grown up until just now. He's actually quite grateful, but the sentimentality is short-lived. Chung has a serious favor to ask. Beak gives him a simple speak, signaling that he's listening. The manager asks Beak to protect his family for just a little while. He needs someone he can trust to keep them safe. While Beak stands guard, Chung plans to uncover the truth behind the Yang Chu family massacre and find the evidence needed to end this once and for all. He bows deeply, showing his immense respect and desperation. When Beak agrees, he can't believe his luck. Beak brushes it off, saying it's not for the manager's sake. The kid just seems nice. It's a classic Beak way of being helpful without admitting he cares. Chung gives him one last smile and a final thank you before heading out into the night. Under the cover of darkness, Chung arrives at the site of the tragedy, the Yang Chu family manor. He looks at the silent, darkened building, ready to face whatever secrets are buried inside. Physician H. Wang delivers the grim news. There's only one culprit behind the massacre at the manor. He explains that every family member was killed with a single, precise strike to the heart. There wasn't a moment of hesitation. The killer is a professional who knows exactly how the human body works. Chung asks if there are any other traces, a unique weapon style or maybe even poison. He's looking for anything that could lead back to a specific gang. H. Wang shakes his head. He's seen plenty of corpses, but he's never witnessed such a clean, ordinary method used with such terrifying efficiency. There were no traces at all. The physician looks at Chung with a heavy expression, knowing the danger this killer represents. He urges the manager to catch this man. Allowing a lunatic with that kind of skill to roam free is a death sentence for everyone in the city. Chung sighs, looking around the dark courtyard. If there really are no traces, their investigation is at a standstill before it even began. Suddenly, his ears pick up a faint rustle in the shadows behind him. His eyes narrow as he prepares for a fight. He spins around and draws his sword in one fluid motion, demanding to know who's hiding in the dark. It was just Baek So Cheon, looking absolutely terrified with the manager's blade inches from his face. Chung lowers his sword, the tension leaving his shoulders but his suspicion remaining. The officer stammers that he came by hopping to find a clue left behind, not expecting to run into the manager himself. He suggests that since his wife must be worried, the manager should head back while he checks the rest of the manor. Chung turns to leave, telling him it's fine because Baek So Cheon is back at the branch protecting them. The officer smiles, relieved to hear that someone as capable as Beak is on the job. He agrees that Beak is indeed reliable. Meanwhile, a dark silhouette drops silently into the courtyard of the branch office. The assassin lands without a sound, a dark figure with eyes glowing with a murderous intent. Black Hand scans the area, convinced he's arrived unnoticed and that the place is empty. But Baek So Cheon is already there, standing right behind him. He tells the assassin he can't let pests like him crawl into a house with a child inside. Black Hand spins around with a sadistic grin, mocking Beak's loud mouth, and asking if he actually knew an attack was coming. He unsheathes his blade, declaring that he'll kill Beak first before moving on to slaughter Chung's family. The assassin lunges forward, vowing that today will be different from their last encounter. This time, he won't let his guard down. Beak doesn't even flinch as the blade comes toward him, his expression remaining as stoic as ever. The blades clash with a loud ring, sparks flying as their weapons lock together in a test of strength. Beak holds the assassin back with ease, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to Black Hand's explosive temper. He tells the man he wants to ask him one thing before this goes any further. Beak looks him dead in the eye and asks if he was the one who murdered Yang Chu's family. Black Hand responds with nothing but a wide, disturbing grin. He's clearly enjoying the memory of his work. Looking at that face, Beak realizes the man has zero intention of hiding what he's done. He's proud of it. Beak asks if he really handled the entire massacre all by himself. He's trying to gauge just how many more of these killers are out there. Black Hand mocks the idea, laughing as he pulls his sword back for another strike. He tells Beak that he thinks way too highly of himself if he believes he can win with a filthy blade like that. The assassin drops into a low, aggressive stance, his sword hand ready to snap out at a moment's notice. He shouts that he doesn't give a damn about Beak's questions or his sense of justice. He's here for blood and nothing else. Beak watches him, unimpressed by the outburst. He asks why the assassin would target a manager's innocent family who had absolutely nothing to do with their fight. Black Hand retorts that he doesn't need a reason, Some people just want to watch others suffer, and he's one of them. He says that killing is the only thing that actually satisfies him, and the more innocent the victim, the better. His eyes flare with an unhinged light as he prepares to kill. He's completely lost to his own bloodlust. He describes his twisted plan to skin the woman and the child, making sure they suffer as much as possible before they die. He wants to display their bodies right in front of I.M. Chung just to see the broken look on the manager's face. He lunges at Baek, closing the distance in an instant. Baek looks at him with pure disgust. He tells the assassin that no matter how many times he deals with monsters like him, he never gets used to it. The two stand off in the middle of the courtyard, the quiet of the night about to be shattered by a brutal fight to the death. Baek So Cheon stands perfectly still, his eyes fixed on the man who just threatened to slaughter a family. He isn't intimidated in the slightest. Black Hand huffs, his breath visible in the cold night air. He can't believe his initial strike was brushed aside so easily, wondering if it was just a fluke. How can he be so calm? The assassin thinks, his frustration growing as he looks at Baek's unreadable, stoic face. Baek offers a cold assessment of his opponent. He tells the man he's not entirely hopeless, possessing the skill of a decent team leader in the Iron Sword unit. But it's not enough to kill one of its commanders, though, Baek adds. Black Hand has no idea what he's talking about, but the dismissal stings. The assassin clenches his fist, his pride deeply wounded. He asks if anyone has ever dared to hurt his pride and lived to tell the tale. The answer is no. He screams, launching himself forward with a killing strike he believes is absolutely inescapable. Baek watches the glowing blade descend toward him, his expression never wavering for even a second. The strike misses its mark completely. Black Hand curses as his blade slices through nothing but empty air. Just a bit, so close, the assassin thinks, convinced he was only a hair's breadth away from victory despite the obvious miss. His eyes glow with a desperate, red light as he pushes himself even harder, determined to land the next blow no matter the cost. He feels a surge of unprecedented focus, wondering if he has ever been this sharp or this fast in his entire life. He realizes he has entered the legendary state of self-forgetfulness, where body and mind become one single weapon. With a feral roar, he puts everything into his next move, certain that this state of mind will grant him the head of his enemy. But a loud pop echoes as Baek's fist deforms the assassin's face. Baek So Cheon tracks every movement of the assassin with a single, sharp look, perfectly timing his counterattack. To the assassin's shock, Baek moves with a grace that defies explanation. "I approach this as training," Baek says calmly. "But you're more boring than I thought," Baek continues, moving so fast he leaves nothing but a blur behind. Black Hand's head snaps back as a heavy blow connects with his jaw, sending him reeling into the darkness. The assassin is completely dazed, his legendary focus shattered in an instant by the sheer power of the counterattack. Driven to madness, he screams that he will use every last drop of his internal energy to rip Baek's mouth open. Baek remains utterly unfazed. He starts to reel back his fist, his eyes fixed on the assassin's screaming, pathetic face. "Oh, this actually feels pretty good," Baek remarks, finding a strange physical satisfaction in the directness of a punch. He unleashes a barrage of blows. Having used only swords all his life, he never realized how thrilling bare-fisted combat could be. For him, this isn't a life-or-death struggle anymore. It has become the perfect training session to refine his new skills. Black Hand is completely overwhelmed, his body jerking under the impact of the rapid-fire punches as he desperately begs for it to stop. A massive impact sends Black Hand reeling back. Bloodied and missing teeth, he desperately begs for his life. Baek So Cheon follows up with a crushing downward blow. The force is enough to completely shatter the guy's ribcage. Under the cold moonlight, someone calls out the shameless bastard. Baek's boot slams down onto the body. He looks down with a cold gaze, telling the killer he should have left his pleas for mercy at home. Bae Unseen looks on in shock as he realizes the fight is over for good. He's stunned that Baek handled a high-level fighter while still wearing that heavy iron training armor. I.M. Chung stares at the corpse, reminded that this man was a direct threat to his family. The rage builds up in him. He wants to go straight to the boss and finish this himself. Baek tells him it's okay to be angry, but he shouldn't let it take control. He points out that the real enemies are living in luxury, so it'd be a waste for him to throw his life away in a fit of rage. I.M. Chung takes a breath and realizes he needs to get his head back in the game. He falls into a pensive silence, looking at the man before him. He's overwhelmed by how much Baek has done for him and his family. Suddenly, they hear the sound of someone approaching. Footsteps crunch against the ground as someone stops right in front of them. Without hesitation, The branch manager drops to the dirt in a deep, respectful bow. He formally declares that he wants to serve Baek as his own big brother from here on out. Baek looks at him, totally confused because the guy is clearly older than he is. But Chung insists he's only 36. Baek isn't buying it, joking that he must be lying about at least 15 years. Bae can't help but chime in, saying it looks like his boss fought an entire war with just his face. Baek just stares at him, convinced the guy is actually in his 50s. He suggests the older man look into some youth preservation arts if he's serious. Chung doesn't care about the age gap. He doubles down on his request for a sworn brotherhood. Baek wonders why everyone is so eager to be his younger brother all of a sudden. He sighs and tells him he can use whatever title he wants, even if he doesn't agree to the big brother part. Chung is just grateful to have his family safe once again. Baek brushes it off, saying countless people owe him their lives, so there's no need for the dramatics. Bae just laughs at the humble brag. They decide it's time to move on to the next problem. Bae looks down at the body of Black Hand and asks what they should do with the evidence. Baek leaves that call up to the branch manager. Chung knows that even if they presented the body, the higher-ups would just deny everything. Plus, if word got out that Baek was the one who killed him, it would draw the wrong kind of attention. Baek stays quiet, letting them figure out the logistics. They agree on a secret burial, acting like the assassin never even showed up. The night wind rustles through the trees as they get to work. As they head back, Bae starts thinking back to when they first made the arrest. He asks Baek if he'd rather have just killed him, then instead of dealing with all this legal trouble. Baek admits he did consider it, leaving Bae curious about how he managed to hold himself back. Baek explains that killing the guy wouldn't have actually changed anything. It would have just left a permanent scar on his own soul. He knows the Murim Alliance's rigid laws can feel like a complete headache at times, locking people up and hunting for evidence, while the powerful just pull strings to overturn the verdict, is a total grind. But there's a deeper reason for all those frustrating rules. Bae looks a bit lost, so Baek points out that those laws weren't actually built to protect the bad guys. They were made for the people who have to go out and fight them. It gives warriors a set of boundaries, so they don't lose themselves and turn into monsters. He doesn't hold back because he's patient or believes in justice. He does it purely for his own sanity. He advises Bae to stick to those same rules if he wants to survive this world intact. Bae takes it in, promising to keep that philosophy in mind. Baek figures that for now, the local boss will be too busy looking for his missing hitman to bother their families. He changes the subject, asking how the actual investigation is coming along. Chung admits they went back to the manor where the massacre happened, but didn't find anything new. Baek tells them they wasted their time. They should have been looking somewhere else entirely. He flashes a slight smile and suggests they go scout the real point of interest together. He's leading them straight to the site of the Shinwa gang's supposed new iron workshop. Meanwhile, at the Murim Alliance Hall of Wisdom, things are starting to heat up. An officer reports the big news. The infamous Black Hand has been taken down by none other than Baek So Cheon. One of the elders sighs, tired of Baek always causing a scene, and tells the officer to send the report straight to the top. Any information regarding Baek is now strictly classified and goes directly to the Alliance leader. It's clear that even after his demotion, the head of the Alliance is still keeping a very close eye on him. The room goes quiet for a moment as they realize how much of a gap he left behind. Baek had been a cornerstone of the Alliance since he was 18, basically living his entire life within its walls. The officer asks the elder if he actually misses having the silver-haired master around. The elder just closes his eyes, letting the silence be his answer. But before the conversation can go any further, a massive emergency bell starts tolling through the hall. The sudden alarm catches everyone in the building off guard. It's an emergency alert, meaning something huge is about to hit them. A panicked messenger rushes in, struggling to catch his breath. He reports that the Dark Heaven Alliance's elite soul hunting squad is moving fast toward their border. The elder realizes the target is likely the Shanxi division. He's shocked that 800 enemy troops managed to gather in total secret. It's a complete failure of intelligence. The enemy pulled off a massive mobilization right under their noses. He quickly orders an emergency dispatch to warn the Shanxi division and all nearby outposts. Soldiers and messengers start scrambling as the building descends into chaos. The enemy is moving with incredible speed, expected to reach the border in under an hour. The elder checks the status of their own troops at the expected point of impact. The news isn't good. They only have 50 guards on site, with reinforcements still a long way off. They're starting to wonder if the Dark Heaven Alliance is looking for an all-out war. There's no movement in other territories, so it might be a targeted strike, but it could still trigger a massive conflict. The Dark Heaven Alliance is notorious for being unpredictable and ruthless, and with their elite soul-hunting squad leading the way, a bloodbath is pretty much guaranteed. The leader of the Seven Swords Society, currently serving as a high-ranking elder within the Murim Alliance, looks incredibly grim as he assesses the brewing conflict. He notes that while the Dark Heaven Alliance has always been provocative after Baek So Cheon's demotions, this current move feels far more dangerous than before. To him, it feels less like a simple probe, and more like a final warning that their time of relative peace is rapidly running out. Suddenly, an emergency report cuts through the tension. The enemy's elite forces are right on the verge of crossing the provincial border. The situation reaches a breaking point. If those hostile troops set foot in Shanxi, it effectively means an all-out war has officially begun. The officials stand frozen in the war room, hearts racing as they wait for the first strike of a conflict that could consume them all. A messenger fumbles with a fresh report that just arrived, his hands shaking as he tries to open the bamboo scroll. The soft sound of the ribbon being untied is the only noise in the otherwise oppressive, heavy silence of the hall. After scanning the contents, the messenger lets out a gasp of pure shock and disbelief. He reports that, against all odds, the Soul Hunting Squad has suddenly turned back without crossing into Shanxi territory. The elder lets out a long, shaky breath, his posture finally relaxing after the terrifying close call they just endured. The rest of the war room is flooded with relief, with many assuming the whole ordeal was just a massive, high-stakes military exercise. However, as the dust settles, the elder points out a chilling pattern. The enemy's aggression has spiked perfectly in line with Baek So Cheon's fall from grace. One of the officials is skeptical, reminding him that the whole world knows Baek has supposedly lost all his internal energy. The elder counters that even without his former martial prowess, Baek's mere existence was once a massive symbolic deterrent against open conflict. He looks at the official unit boards, realizing that as long as Baek held his legendary rank, the enemy was too afraid to start a full-scale war. The official suggests that if Baek is that important, they need to bring the silver-haired master back to the headquarters immediately. But the elder knows it's not that simple. The alliance leader personally reclaiming Baek's sword was a sign that he never wants to see him again. He looks at the ghost shadow sword resting cold in its case, wondering if Baek could ever truly return to the elite world he once led. In the silence that follows, the map marker representing Baek's current location seems to mock their sudden desperation. It's a bitter pill for them to swallow, knowing that one man's reputation alone was once treated as the equivalent of an entire army. The officer looks at the leader's back, wondering if the Murim Alliance even stands a chance in the coming storm without their former champion. Meanwhile, far away from the politics of the capital, a beautiful mountain landscape stretches out under the bright midday sun. Baek So Cheon scans the area, nodding that they've finally arrived at the site where the Shinhwa gang is supposedly building a new iron workshop. Baek So Cheon observes the area with his usual stoic gaze, admitting that while he knew the coordinates, it's his first time seeing the actual terrain. He asks his companions to really look at the land and consider what a hero like Yang Chu might have discovered here that cost him his life. Towering, jagged mountains surround the valley on almost every side, creating a massive natural wall. Baek So Cheon realizes the strategic value immediately. This isn't the right kind of land for a workshop. It's a perfect spot for a fortress. Baek points out the narrow path they just used to enter, highlighting how easily a handful of men could hold it against a legion. The high cliffs flanking the road are a nightmare for any invading force, making it the ultimate vantage point for a deadly ambush. Chung, the branch manager, looks around with a new sense of clarity, agreeing with Baek's sharp assessment of the landscape. It becomes clear that the Iron Workshop is just a cover story for building a secret, illegal fortress right in the heart of their territory. Chung breaks into a cold sweat, realizing that Yang Chu and his entire family were likely wiped out just to keep this massive secret buried. Baek agrees, stating that an operation of this scale means the entire Shinhwa gang, including their top leadership, is directly involved in the conspiracy. Chung asks if it was the killer known as Black Hand who actually carried out the leader's bloody orders that night. Baek shakes his head, recalling his brief encounter with the man. Black Hand had explicitly claimed he wasn't the kind of dirty sword who would slaughter a family. Chung mulls over the term dirty sword, trying to figure out exactly what kind of specialized killer that actually refers to. They look down at the ground, imagining a professional who can kill without a single shred of hesitation or remorse and leave no evidence. A look of sudden, terrifying realization crosses Chung's face as he whispers the single word, Assassin. It all makes sense now. The total lack of evidence at the crime scene was because the killer was a professional trained to leave no traces behind. Baek So Cheon wonders if there's a local assassin organization that the Shinhwa gang might have employed for such a job. Bae Sing looks at him and drops a heavy name. The most infamous assassin group in the entire province is the Seven Swords Society. Bae Sing explains the formidable structure of the Seven Swords Society, an elite organization led by 7 master killers with a small army of highly trained members under them. Despite the clear danger, Baek announces his intention to investigate the assassins himself, prompting a mixture of awe and concern from Bae Sing. Bae is skeptical, pointing out that professional assassins are sworn to absolute secrecy and would never voluntarily reveal their client's identity. Without a word of argument, Baek reaches into his robes and pulls out a small, heavy object, handing it over to the young squad leader. Bae looks down at the black dagger in his palms, nodding the single word, heaven etched onto its sleek, dark surface. Baek gives him a set of instructions, directing him toward a place called the 9 Dragons Inn, which sits quietly at the foot of 9 Dragons Mountain. He tells Bae to give the specific dagger to the innkeeper and relay a cryptic message about their master being currently located at the Munseong branch. Following the plan, Bae Sing cautiously pushes open the heavy wooden doors of the inn, his voice hesitant as he calls out for service. As he approaches the counter, Baek's voiceover echoes in his mind, warning him that the seemingly ordinary people in this place are far from harmless. Bae remains on high alert, his eyes scanning the room as he faces the calm-looking attendant waiting behind the front desk. Later that night, as the moon hangs high over the local branch office, Chung walks through the quiet courtyards on his rounds. He pauses, hearing a strange, rhythmic metallic sound coming from the private training grounds, and goes to investigate with a curious expression. He finds a pair of heavy sandbags and weights tied securely around someone's ankles, swaying slightly in the cool night air. To his utter astonishment, he sees a shirtless Baek So Cheon doing a one-handed handstand, his muscular body glistening with sweat from a grueling workout. Baek even lifts his entire body, and all that training equipment using just 2 of his fingers. Chung rushes over, panicking at the sight of such physical strain, but Baek simply orders him to start massaging his overworked shoulders and arms. The branch manager quickly obeys, kneeling behind the warrior to work on the tight knots in his broad, scarred back. The moment his hands make contact with Baek's skin, a cloud of steam rises into the air, accompanied by a sharp, hissing sound. Chung's eyes widen in shock as he realizes Baek's body is literally burning hot from the sheer intensity of his secret training session. He stares at Baek's stoic profile, realizing he is looking at a man who pushes himself far beyond the limits of a normal human being. The sheer dedication and hidden power radiating from the former master leave Chung feeling deeply intimidated and humbled. When the manager falters for a moment, Baek's voice snaps him back to attention, demanding that he keep massaging without any further delay. High above, the dark clouds drift across the moonlit sky, while the sounds of the intense recovery session drift through the empty courtyard. Inside, a hearty spread of warm meat, steamed dumplings, and a bottle of wine sits waiting on the table, ready for a well-earned late-night meal. Baek So Cheon and the officer are winding down with a drink. The officer mentions his wife sent over some food, but he didn't expect the night to turn into a full-blown drinking session. Baek is more impressed by the alcohol, choosing to ignore the food for a second to appreciate the quality of the brew. The officer looks a bit embarrassed by the praise, so Baek just smirks and tells him to make sure he thanks his wife for the meal. He's clearly enjoying the chance to tease his subordinate, who can only manage a polite, slightly awkward nod. The officer complains that being messed with to his face is a bit much, but Baek just shrugs it off as being honest. They sit at the wooden table in the quiet courtyard, the heavy tension of the past few days finally starting to fade. After a few more drinks, the officer looks at the spread and asks if it's too late for a guy like him to really master martial arts. He saw Baek training earlier and felt a sudden, intense urge to push his own physical limits. Baek drops a truth bomb. He actually had to start his entire journey over when he was exactly the officer's age. He picks up a piece of meat and explains that back then, he was a total wreck who could barely lift a finger. The officer stares at him, completely stunned by the idea that someone like Baek was once even more incompetent than an ordinary mortal. He tries to play it off as a joke, but the serious look in Baek's eyes tells him everything he needs to know. Trying to change the subject, the officer asks what kind of errand squad leader Bae was sent on. Baek takes another sip and casually mentions it was to go pick up someone truly terrifying. He explains that if the message got through, The scariest person in the martial world will be showing up at their doorstep in a few days. The officer is genuinely curious now, wondering who could possibly be that dangerous. Baek gives him a final warning. Don't judge this person by their looks, or he won't survive the encounter. The guy just laughs it off as another one of Baek's jokes, but the sweat on his forehead says he's at least a little worried. A few days pass, and the Munseong branch is quiet under the bright afternoon sun. Suddenly, a figure in dark robes starts walking through the gate with absolute confidence. In her hand, she's carrying a black dagger marked with the character for heaven. It's Chunjuk, the king of assassins, and she's not exactly thrilled about being summoned to such a remote place. Meanwhile, Bae Unsing is still scratching his head, trying to figure out who Baek was talking about. He tells the officer that his trip to the inn was totally normal, and the owner didn't seem special at all. He asks if anyone else has heard anything, unaware that their dangerous guest has already arrived. Chunjuk walks through the compound, her presence sharp enough to cut through the air. The guards can sense something is off, their instincts screaming that a predator is nearby. Inside one of the private rooms, a hand slides the door open with a slow, deliberate creak. Baek So Cheon slowly steps out and orders everyone else to get the hell out of here, his face partially hidden by the shadows, and orders them to make sure nobody interrupts. Chunjuk steps forward, her gaze fixed on the man who dared to call her out. Outside, the entire compound goes silent as the birds circle high above the roof. She tosses the dagger onto the table, admitting she almost didn't believe the message was actually from him. But then again, there isn't anyone else in the world who would have the guts to order her around like this. Baek doesn't waste time with pleasantries and just points out that she's 2 days late. She snaps back, reminding him that he summoned her to a remote corner of the province on zero notice. She pulls off her veiled hat, revealing she basically ran the whole way here just to make it in 48 hours. Then she starts getting cocky, mocking him for getting demoted and losing his prestigious position as a strike leader. Baek tells her to shut it, making it clear he's not in the mood for her games. He places his hand on the table, and the surrounding atmosphere instantly freezes into ice. In a blur of movement, a loud smack echoes throughout the entire courtyard. He just slapped the king of assassins across the face, leaving her completely stunned and clutching her stinging cheek. Chunjuk stares at him in disbelief, her voice sharp with anger as she asks if he's actually lost his mind. In the blink of an eye, several blades are suddenly pressed against Baek's neck from every direction. These are the 4 heavenly killers, her elite guards who have manifested from the shadows to protect their master. Baek doesn't even flinch. He barks at them to put their weapons away, asking how they dare threaten him. The cloaked assassins hesitate, their glowing eyes fixed on the man who seems completely unfazed by death. Chunjuk finally opens her mouth, telling her subordinates to stand down before things get out of hand. With a sudden gust of wind, the killers vanish as quickly as they appeared, leaving the courtyard empty once again. She's still fuming, warning him that he better have a damn good reason for laying a hand on her, or he won't live to see tomorrow. Baek remains cold, reminding her of the absolute law he established. Never kill children or those who don't know martial arts. Her anger turns to confusion as she quickly clarifies that her people would never commit such a senseless massacre. Baek presses her, asking if she can really guarantee the actions of every single assassin organization under her command. She tells him to stop pushing her so she can think, clearly rattled by the weight of his accusation. She stares at him, realizing that even without his internal energy, the pressure he exerts is still overwhelming. Baek asks if she's forgotten who he is, and she knows the answer deep down, not a chance. He reminds her that he's the one who put her on the throne in the first place, giving her the power she is now. She lets out a dry laugh, admitting that his past role is the only reason she hasn't taken his head yet. After a long sigh, she asks which organization was supposedly bold enough to break the laws of killing. Baek doesn't hesitate with the answer. It was the Seven Swords Society. Her expression hardens at the mention of that name. It's the last group she wanted to hear about. The Seven Swords Society leads the faction that opposes her, making them the most dangerous enemies she has to deal with. She realizes that moving against them purely on Baek's word could put her own position in jeopardy if he's wrong. Baek just watches her, knowing exactly what kind of political trap she's currently navigating. She studies his face, searching for any sign of doubt or a lie, but finds nothing. Finally, she lets out a heavy breath, her posture relaxing just a tiny bit. Baek asks her what she wants in exchange for her help in this investigation. He explains that he needs ironclad proof that the Shinhwa gang was the one who commissioned the hit on the Yang Chu family. She agrees to conduct an internal investigation and promises to get back to him once she has the details. As she starts to walk away, she gives him one last warning. If he ever hits her again, she'll make sure he's beaten like a dog. She glances back at her veiled hat as she picks it up, getting ready to leave this compound behind. With a flick of her cloak, she dashes toward Baek. She leaves him with one final chilling question, asking if he really has a death wish. She reaches out her hand to Baek's neck, a powerful surge of internal energy radiating from her fingertips to prove that she is no ordinary opponent either. Her eyes narrow, emitting a purple glow as she stares straight into Baek's eyes. Baek stands there, his expression unreadable as the weight of the meeting settles on him. After a moment, she clicks her tongue and lowers her hand, muttering that it's not yet the time to take Baek's life. Chunjuk's parting words echo in the air. She thinks his body is as hollow as a dried reed and wants to watch him rot. A strong wind sweeps through the branch office, carrying away the lingering tension of the assassin's presence. Baek leans his hand against the wooden railing, his breath finally evening out after the intense confrontation. He looks out over the rooftops, letting out a long, weary sigh as the sun begins to set. Despite his calm exterior, he admits to himself that he really did almost die back there. The scene shifts to a boat, cutting through the dark waters of a river late at night. A hand reaches for a cup of tea, the steam rising slowly into the cool night air. Chunjuk sits alone on the boat, the crescent moon hanging in the dark sky behind her as she sips her tea. She looks up at the guard standing on deck, asking him if he's curious about the man known as Baek So Cheon. The guard, Dong Seong, admits his curiosity, wondering what kind of man could command such respect and fear. She asks how long it has been since he became one of her guardian killing stars, and he replies that exactly 5 years and 4 months have passed. Chunjuk notes that is the same amount of time she has reigned as the king of assassins, a position she inherited under blood-soaked circumstances. She points out that while he and the others, Baek Seong and Seo Seong, were busy training, they missed the true horrors of the world. She recounts the night Baek So Cheon single-handedly slaughtered the former king and 97 other elite assassins of the League. Dong Seong is visibly shaken by the tale, his face paling at the sheer impossibility of such a feat. Chunjuk confesses that she witnessed the massacre herself, and even now, the memory is enough to make her hands tremble. She explains that the Dark Heaven Alliance had placed an unprecedented contract of 3 million taels on Baek's head, leading to endless attempts on his life. Enraged by the relentless missions, Baek secured the Alliance leader's permission and systematically wiped out the entire Assassin League. She pours more tea, marveling at how a man with no internal energy left could still have the audacity to slap her across the face. Nam Seong, another of her elite guards, steps forward and points out that they could easily kill him as he is now. He asks why she is holding back, but Chunjuk remains silent, her mind drifting back to the past. She remembers the weight of a blade at her throat, the cold steel reflecting the eyes of the man who had defeated her. Back then, as the successor to the King of Assassins, she was at the mercy of the Supreme Master. Baek So Cheon had spared her life, declaring her the new King of Assassins, but with one absolute condition. He forbade her from ever accepting contracts to kill children or those who do not practice martial arts. She had no choice but to accept, promising on her name and her honor to uphold his laws. In the present, she looks down at her hands, admitting that the oath was the only path left for her to survive. She reasons that if someone truly broke that promise, then enduring a slap is a small price to pay for uncovering the traitor. Later that night, her carriage arrives at the entrance of the prestigious Seven Swords Society. Inside the dojo, rows of spears and swords stand neatly in their racks, illuminated by the warm glow of lanterns. The Seven Swords Society leader greets her with a deep bow, expressing his honor at her sudden visit. Chunjuk, hidden behind her veiled hat, offers a polite smile and apologizes for dropping by unannounced. Her eyes remain sharp and watchful as the leader graciously invites her inside to discuss her business. A cup of hot tea sits on the table between them, its steam rising in the quiet meeting room. She mentions that she's noticed some trouble recently between the local Murim alliance and the Manhwa gang. The leader nods, acknowledging the friction between Hall Master Nam of the Manhwa gang and the local branch. He asks if that's the reason for her visit, and she confirms it, telling him she's there to give him orders. She asks point-blank if his society was involved in the massacre of the Yang Chu family. The leader immediately denies it with a calm smile, claiming that such a thing is absolutely impossible. He asks why she would take an interest in such a dark matter, his expression remaining perfectly neutral. Chunjuk reveals that she received a report from an informant, causing the leader to momentarily tense up. She explains that the report absurdly claims the Seven Swords Society was the one that took the contract for the massacre. The leader dismisses it as false information, and Chunjuk agrees, claiming she never believed the rumors from the start. He invites her to stay for fine liquor, but she politely declines, stating she still has business to attend to. With a jovial expression, he tells her that he shall be waiting for her next visit to the society. As soon as she turns her back, however, the leader's face darkens into a mask of pure, murderous intent. The carriage rolls away into the night, the sound of the wheels echoing through the quiet streets. The leader grits his teeth, realizing with a cold fury that the secret of the contract has somehow leaked to the outside world. Under the cover of darkness, the carriage speeds through the forest, carrying Chinjuk back to her base. Chinjuk sits within the carriage, her voice cold and curt as she declares that the Seven Swords Society is undoubtedly responsible for the massacre. Her guard, driving the carriage through the night, asks her how she can be so sure of their guilt without concrete proof. She explains that knowing the leader's prideful personality, if they were truly innocent, he would have demanded to know the identity of the informant who tarnished their honor. Instead, he remained suspiciously calm, never once pressing for the source of the accusation despite it involving a grave violation of the laws of killing. Chinjuk notes that any truly honorable master would have caused a massive scene, demanding a thorough investigation to clear their name. A close-up of her lips shows a knowing smirk as she recounts how the old man was flustered by her sudden questioning and failed to maintain his composure. The guard agrees with her logic, but points out that even if they are guilty, finding physical proof of their involvement will be incredibly difficult. He then asks where they will head next, and Chinjuk falls into a thoughtful silence as the carriage continues its journey. The next morning, the sun shines brightly over the Munseong branch office, the birds chirping in the trees nearby. Baek So Cheon is drying off with a towel, his muscular chest covered in jagged, faded scars from his past life as a warrior. He looks up in surprise at a visitor. Chinjuk stands before him with her arms crossed, her presence as imposing as ever as he asks her why she has returned so soon.